Call the meeting to order. Mr. Scott, would you lead us in the pledge? Yes, please rise, put your hand over your heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll observe a moment of silence. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Sheevy.
Here.
Breckus.
Here.
Zadra. Delgado. Dorch. Jordan. Cashel.
Here. This time, we'll go to public comment. Jean Gardella? Sorry, couldn't read it, Jean.
Okay,
if I'd have looked over there, I'd have known who it was. Sorry about that.
Mayor, council members, city employees, and members of the audience. Naomi, Moran, Anna Mae, Leanna, Mary, and 6 others injured, one very, very seriously. October the 2nd, 2006, Nickel Mine Amish Elementary School, Nickel Mine, Pennsylvania. Since I was here last, have any of you asked yourselves, what can I do, after seeing or reading any of the several news stories about the murders of several people that occurred in the last 2 weeks? Are you doing something? Well, you are meeting your primary responsibility as a council member to provide for the safety and security of your community, its citizens, and guests. That primary and highest responsibility is the same for all levels of government. How do we know this? Examine your budget. Police, fire, municipal judiciary, building code enforcement, jails, flood control, lifeguards, and even snow removal. These and other safety and security activities consume the greatest part of your budget and your resources. What can I do? You can provide for the safety and security of your community. Is it enough? Should I do more? Should we do something else? To move forward in answering these questions and others, it is important to come to a common understanding of rights guaranteed under the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. I'm not an attorney. I've spent several hours doing my best to gain an understanding of those rights. There are several things that are important to our common understanding and clear in the Supreme Court decision of D.C. versus Heller, issued June 2008. This major decision is an important, most important, and comprehensive decision regarding the Second Amendment. The court found in a 5-4 decision that citizens have an absolute right to own guns and possess them. They found that this right is based on, among other things, the right to self-defense. They also found that ownership and possession of guns can be limited in certain circumstances, like the prohibition of ownership of guns by convicted felons or mentally ill persons. Many cities and counties and states have enacted laws and ordinances that limit the risk and restrict the rights of the Second Amendment. They are at this point constitutional and effective at this time. Your city council and others may weigh in on the constitutionality if and when you move to take specific actions. If you are doing something you feel is necessary to meet your first and primary responsibility as a city council person to provide for the safety and security of your those in your city, you must move forward. You must keep clearly in mind that only the courts, up to and including the United States Supreme Court, are the only place where constitutionality is determined. If my question becomes your question, we must find specific things to do and take first steps to improve the security and safety of your citizens, family, and guests. Thank you for
Thank you very much.
listening.
Sam Gettle?
Hi, welcome all the new faces. This is for Oscar. We're facing an unprecedented amount of crime and graffiti in the Wells Avenue area the last 2 months. And so I specifically would ask you to think about coordinating a public and a private resolution specifically on the Broadway, Grand Canyon areas that is causing problems coming into, we're north of Vassar, as well as the Wells Avenue 7-Eleven, which has been a crime pit for 5 years. Every NAB meeting, the stats always show that that place is filled with several crimes almost per night, including the one that was in the paper about somebody wanting to put it on fire. There's a vacant building at 314 Vassar that has been graffitied several times since Christmas. It's never going away. I fully understand that we don't have the budget. We shouldn't have the budget to protect a lot of very bad landowners and building owners. And I think that combining public assistance with making these people provide the security full-time, every day, if you're going to have a 7-Eleven on Wells Avenue and you're going to have crime every night affecting the preschool and all the neighbors, they need to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Brendanson? Yeah, gee, hey, Tony, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Nice
Good.
to see you, Mayor
Good to see
Patel,
you.
and also the other city council members. Hey, I'm here to talk about dark skies. So what do you guys do after it gets dark? Okay, I don't want to talk about all the little details. What I want to talk about is, you can see the sky, you can see the stars. If you live in a city that has planned its lighting around making those skies available. A few years ago, I helped orchestrate a field trip for Washoe County school kids, about 200 of them, that we went up to the East Bowl of Mount Rose Ski Resort. And we had those 200 kids up there and really having a great time. Lots of telescopes and whatever, and lots of stars. I had a third grader come up and tug on my pants, and he says, "Hey, Mr. Astronomer," he said, "when is that cloud going to go away so I can see the stars?" And it was the Milky Way. It was the first time that he had seen the Milky Way. And I said, "Well, so where do you live?" And he says, "Well, I live in Reno." And I said, "Well, where in Reno?" And he said, "Well, by the Grand Sierra Resort." Well, you don't see the Milky Way from the Grand Sierra Resort. And my point today is that I think it's important for our children to see those kinds of things. Some of them don't go camping. I mean, it's kind of a sad thing. We live in a beautiful state. Honestly, I've always thought that the two greatest resources that Nevada has is rocks and dark skies. And so I'd like to see more dark skies in Reno. So anyways, I have a letter here that I'd like to give to the city clerk, just recommending that the city council look into working with the International Dark Sky Association to help plan lighting that will not obscure the skies. And then also, if you're interested in learning more about this, I'm hosting a screening of a movie called The City Dark at the Museum of Art tomorrow night that talks about that very thing. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tony.
You guys have a good day.
Good to see you. Thank you. Ted Levetter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'd just like to continue with my discussion from last week of the open meeting laws. First, I'd like to say it was a really great user experience for me. I got to come in, give my public comment, and then watch your discussion of the issue on YouTube the next day. So I appreciate that effort to make government more accessible. I would like to address some of the concerns that you guys mentioned with my request to take public comment after both the staff report and deliberation from council. I can appreciate your desire to allow public comment to inform your deliberation, but the Attorney General really recommends that you use your deliberation to inform public comment. I'd just like to read from page 43 of the Open Meeting Laws Manual. It's the definition of deliberate. To deliberate is to examine, weigh, and reflect upon the reasons for or against the choice. Deliberation thus connotes not only collective discussion, but also the collective acquisition or the exchange of facts preliminary to the ultimate decision. When, as a member of the public, we are given a limited amount of time to address our concerns to the council. And there may be a number of issues we could come up here and choose to address, but we cannot address them all. When you deliberate prior to public comment, it helps to inform the public about the issues that are going to be of most important and weigh heavily on your decisions. So I would like to take a moment and ask the council, with the mayor's permission, to discuss this issue. Open meeting law allows the council to have discussions on public comment, and I was hoping we could take just a minute to do that today, make sure you understand why it's important to deliberate prior to public comment.
Right. Well, the council, if I remember correctly, we agreed to change that.
Yes, sir, and I really appreciate you did take one step in the right direction, and that was to start taking public comment after the staff report. But Councilwoman Zadra raised some legitimate concerns that she uses public comment to inform her deliberation. But the Open Meeting Law Manual suggests that it's more important to use your deliberation to inform public comment. And the way I see it working is you're going to have staff report, there's going to be some basic questions that you're going to ask the staff, have deliberation, have public comment, and then there will be further deliberation. But without the council informing the public about which issues are going to weigh on their decision, the 3 minutes that I'm giving up here, I'm left in the dark about what should I choose to address. And I can come up here and really rattle things off really quick, but that doesn't do very well for anybody either. So the reason the Attorney General suggests that you deliberate prior to public comment is to make just to help frame our comments, to make them more pertinent to your decisions.
And a lot of people come visit with us early on about their concerns and stuff. So that's why putting it at the end is fine. The council doesn't have a problem with it.
So you will have deliberations prior to public comment?
What did we decide? After
Yeah,
staff
our
presentation.
decision was that we would have public comment after the staff.
Staff presentation.
Because we want that public comment
Right.
before we start deliberating.
That's right.
And that was our position.
And the Attorney General, the resident expert in Nevada, suggests that that is the incorrect way to go. And if you're looking to get the most out of your public comment, you have to inform us about what's most important. If there are 5 things that I could come talk to you about, but only 2 of those are really going to weigh heavily on your decision, how am I to know which are going to weigh heaviest? The Attorney General suggests that you deliberate prior to public comment and specifically says, reflect upon the reasons for or against the choice. The reason he's telling you to reflect upon those reasons is to inform the public when they come up here to provide you with the most pertinent public comment possible. And I would suggest that after public comment's over, you would continue with further deliberation based on what you heard from public comment. There's no reason that you can't deliberate prior to public comment and after public comment.
All right. We'll take that
Mr.
under
Mayor.
consideration.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Ted, I think that that's exactly what we do. I'm not sure if I recall ever having seen you attend one of our public meetings where a mass of people come in and have major concerns about an issue that's in front of us. Maybe you have, I just don't recall. But I don't think I've ever seen a time, ever, where the people who had a concern wanted to express it after we had already deliberated. They wanted us to hear exactly what their concerns were. Some of us take very copious notes with the individual's name so that when we do have questions, we call those individuals back and get additional information from them. Happens all the time.
Yep.
We're doing what you're asking for in this method. We're doing it.
The Attorney
We're
General.
assuring that they will have the opportunity to give us all of their concerns before we start to formulate a frame of thought.
The only reason that you are only in violation of the spirit of open meeting laws and not the letter is because you take public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting. If that wasn't the case, if you only took public comment on agenda items, you would have to deliberate before public comment based on the open meeting laws, or you would be in violation. You are in violation of the spirit of the open meeting laws, and according to the Attorney General, when you're in violation of the spirit of the open meeting laws, it has the effect of discouraging public participation, and I know how important
Okay,
it is.
well, we're not going to debate it this afternoon, and legal counsel can look in and give us any guidance that they wish. Anybody got anything you want to bring up? All right, now let's go to Mark McKell.
And there's no deliberation on my comment. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, go ahead.
Okay, there's no deliberation needed. It's just, this is my mission, and I must do it. Okay. Hi, my name is Mark. I'm here today to show you what can happen when you get in the car with a drunk driver. I'm reading from this because I suffer from a traumatic brain injury, and I get off track and cuss sometimes, involuntarily. In 1989, we drank four gallons of wine, and we're on our way to get some more. We had a car crash, and the police report said we were going over 100 miles an hour. We hit a curb and rolled 8 times, going over 150 feet. I was not wearing my seatbelt, which wasn't mandatory back then, and I was ejected and the car landed on my head. I was dead at the scene, but when I got to the hospital, a doctor brought me back to life. I was in a coma for a month, in the hospital 5.5 months more. When I was released from the hospital, I was wheelchair bound, but the Holy Spirit helped. God willed me alive to show what could happen if you get in the car with a drunk driver, or if you drink and drive. I can't walk anymore. I have to use a walker or an electric wheelchair. I ride the bus now because I can't drive. I can't find gainful employment. I can't have a relationship. I have troubles talking and speaking and thinking, obviously. Don't let this happen to you people. I have lost my wife and my family. When I was a young adult, I had 8 drunk driving arrests, 23 reckless driving arrests, and 32 driving out of suspended license citations. I wear dentures now because I did drugs when I was young. It was years after I quit doing drugs I lost my teeth, but the damage was done. I'm an example of what can happen if you get in the car with a drunk driver. It's my mission in life to talk about this. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a very good message.
Just a minute, hold on. Something's under here. Oh, thank you.
Good message, Mark, and thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'm Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Peak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. My name is Greg Peak. Members of the council, this is my first time in front of many of you. I want to welcome you to the council. Look forward to working with you on construction and development issues and good public policy. I'm here to talk about good public policy and to once again talk about fire impact fees as they relate to new home construction. As you guys know very well, because you've directed them to do it, the staff is currently taking a look at the Public Services Facility and Infrastructure Plan to talk about fire in relation to fire protection. Chief Hernandez and his team and Fred Tournier and Claudia Hansen and their team are updating the master plan, reflecting the changes to the master plan because of the fire department deconsolidation. They're looking at standards, they're looking at response times, definitions, and what the community can expect from its fire department. We appreciate being part of that process. But I'm here today to ask you guys, ask the council to direct staff to look at establishing a fire impact fee through NRS 278B, that process. In December, the Builders Association of Northern Nevada sent a letter asking that the Reno City Council provide staff with authorization to continue talks to prepare an amended facility plan for future council approval. Copies of that letter were given to the city clerk, and hopefully you have it. That's right. Builders Association of Northern Nevada is standing before you today to ask about impact fees. We believe that impact fees on fire protection is good public policy. It's really a win-win for the community. It provides stability for the community and for the developers. When big projects go in, they of course have to talk about fire protection. But when you have a small project go in with only 10 homes, they need to pay their fair share of fire protection as well. You get the onesies and twosies. It provides predictability for the developer. We know what our costs are. There are no surprises. You've heard me talk about exactions before. Personally, there will be no surprises if we have good facility planning. It provides facilities for public and planned growth. The very, very important. The public need is met if we have good planning and impact fees in place. There are no arbitrary exactions and there's no uneven treatment. So I'm here today asking you, on behalf of the Builders Association, that the council direct staff to include an analysis and evaluation of fire impact fees in the ongoing update to the Public Services Facilities and Infrastructure Plan. They've done a great job so far. We've had a very good working relationship with staff. Talks have been transparent, which is very important, and we ask that staff is commended for this. They've done a great job, but we want to continue down this path, including all stakeholders, bring in all stakeholders to reach a win-win for the community on the fire impact fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Having no other public comment cards, I'm going to close the public comment section. Now we'll go to city manager's report. Nothing under the city manager. All right, approval of the agenda. We have several items here. Before we go for approval, item J2, Mr. Frankovich has requested that item be continued. Proclamations, none. We have two presentations, the Chief's Certificate of Commendation and the Regional Transportation Plan. Public comment 12 noon, 15. Item F1 through 4 will be heard after 12:15 and time certain. We have a time certain at 12:45 for item D3 for Pedro Martinez with the school district. Any other changes with it? Have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Approval of the minutes for February 5th and February 13th.
Mayor, I have a correction to one of the minutes.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, I think on the February 13th minutes, for item item G8, it states that Council Zadra person was, and this is on page 10, absent at 1:37 p.m. And my memory serves me that she was away, but she is shown as the seconder of that following motion, and I don't think she participated in that vote.
Yes, I did.
You did?
I stepped away to get water.
Well, but then the minutes say further on down that you returned, a return time. So it shows the minutes are internally inconsistent, and my memory was that she wasn't at the table, so I don't know how to,
I'll check.
I mean, her memory is.
We'll double check.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Any other corrections or anything? Chair will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Have a second, all in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item B, cash disbursements. Any disclosures? Chair will entertain a motion. Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second, all in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item C, proclamations. There are none. Presentations. Item D1, Chief.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council. Steve Pitts on behalf of the Reno Police Department. With me this afternoon are Miss Jacqueline O'Malley, who we're going to recognize, Deputy Chief Tom Robinson, and Lieutenants Scott Dugan and Mohammed Rafiquat. I want to thank you for spending and sharing your time today to recognize Jacqueline for the work she's done, not just for the Reno Police Department, but the City of Reno over the last 9 years. For the last 9 years of dedicated and transparent service to the citizens of Reno and the Reno Police Department as the Reno Gazette-Journal's crime beat reporter. As such, she frequently met with members of our organization and covered crime stories impacting the safety of our community and other issues impacting our residents in this community. These stories range from violent homicides, sexual assaults, gang violence, drug trafficking, and really the most important thing is the quality of life for our citizens and visitors. Jacqueline performed her duties in that capacity professionally in an unbiased manner. She established an effective working relationship with members of the Reno Police Department and established credibility and trust in our organization. She nourished a mutually beneficial working relationship with the department and frequently worked together with us to facilitate the distribution of information to those we serve. Constructive news-media relations are vital to the Reno Police Department's responsibility as public servants. To model excellence in policing, law enforcement agencies depend on the community's understanding of where we stand in relationship to problems. We need the support of the community, the trust and confidence in almost every case. The news media is the most effective way for the department to communicate its priorities and accomplishments of our responsibilities to the community. Jacqueline demonstrated journalistic excellence by her professionalism, her unbiased coverage of these many stories that I've shared with you today, and by role modeling our values in the Reno Police Department of trust, respect, fairness, and integrity. And Jacqueline, I just want to say that you've made the Reno Police Department better in the last 9 years because of your relationship with us, and we're blessed for it. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. You want to say something?
It was my pleasure to be the crime beat reporter for the Reno Gazette-Journal, and it was my pleasure working with the Reno Police Department. Everybody was great, very just willing to share information, so I really cherish that relationship I had with them. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, again, thank you for sharing your time on this matter.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, Regional Transportation, item D2, Amy McAbee. Sir, did you not hear me? I didn't call your name, I called Amy. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Lee Gibson, for the record, Lee Gibson, Regional Transportation Commission, I want to take a moment before Amy gives you the presentation
Yes,
on the
sir.
Regional Transportation Plan and tell you how grateful we are towards your staff for helping us put this plan together over the last 18 months. Specifically, I'd really like to extend my appreciation to Charla Honey, Steve Bunnell, Claudia Hansen, Fred Turnier, and John Flansburgh and Bill Thomas for their help. They've really you hear a lot about shared services and working together, and these guys have really been a model of helping us sit down and get a lot of work done. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amy for a presentation on the plan, then we'll both be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Amy Cummings, Director of Planning at RTC, and I want to give you a brief overview on the Regional Transportation Plan and also call attention to our March 14th at 4:30 at the Discovery Museum. We'll have an open house for the plan. It's also available on our website at yourwashortc.com, and we are currently in the midst of our public comment period, which will run through March 15th. So we encourage everyone to go to the website and take a look at the plan. And also, I believe you're getting a copy of some other upcoming RTC meetings. There are several for the Pyramid McCarran intersection project on March 19th at 4 o'clock, and about the Southeast Connector on March 21st at 5:30. So hope everyone can join us for those. We have done a very robust community outreach program for the Regional Transportation Plan. We've had roundtable discussions based on specific issues like senior transportation, youth transportation, and complete streets. And we've also had several community workshops, and we've had great participation at those. The priorities that you'll see identified in the plan, we have 4 items that we're recommending funding for each year. One is implementing the ADA transition plan, which the RTC board approved about a year ago, and that will help us fix and upgrade our sidewalks and crosswalks throughout the region. In addition to implementing our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, keeping our roads in good condition with the pavement preservation program, and upgrading traffic signals through the ITS management program. We identified a vision for transit. We have a big disconnect between what the community has told us they want for transit service and what we're able to afford, essentially, with our sales tax revenues, which is what funds our transit system for the most part. So in terms of the vision, the long-term items that the community told us they would like to provide are extensions of the Rapid further on Virginia Street and 4th Street Prater Way, extending transit service out into the North Valleys and some of the other suburban locations in our region, and looking into some service targeted towards seniors, because that's a very big growing demographic of our community, and we recognize that there are going to be some mobility needs for those residents in our outlying suburban areas. So that's the vision plan. So we've identified that as a gap, but there are several things that we do in the short term want to move forward with, which are an extension of Rapid to UNR, which is something we're working on for this next year, looking at some summer weekend service up to Lake Tahoe to tie into the Blue Go service to Sand Harbor, as well as an extension of Ride up to the Galleria. So those are a few of the short-term transit improvements that we are including. Beyond that, it's really going to be status quo for the remainder of the plan. We also include several roadway improvements in the RTP. Many of these are focused on livability, such as the 4th Street Prater Way corridor study, which have a big emphasis on pedestrian and bicycle mobility, as well as safety. Most of these just come back to the core of safety improvements. And we also include the regional connectivity projects, and these are the major projects that are going to connect where people live, where they work throughout the region, such as the Southeast Connector, as well as improvements on I-80 and 395 to make sure freight movement keeps operating through our region. And this is our website, yourwashortc.com. We invite everyone to go and take a look there and give us their comments. We feel this is a plan that is really focused on quality of life and takes a balanced approach to improving livability for our region. And as I mentioned, we're in our public comment period, and we have our public meeting on March 14th at 4:30, and then a public hearing at the RTC board meeting on the 15th. Thank you.
Anybody got any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Cummings, does the City of Reno Council as a body approve this plan?
No.
We do not. Okay. And question number 2, I've read about halfway of this plan and seen your presentation a couple times now. As a fiscally constrained plan, per the federal requirements for this, the vision of the transit and some of these mega projects that have real high dollar numbers, I think they're the connective ones, are those, when they do their fiscal constraint analysis, the Federal Highways Administration, do they look at the vision, or do they look at where do they zero down on understanding if we have the resources to pay for these?
Thank you for that question, and that's something that we have worked with FTA on to distinguish between what the community has told us is the vision for transit and then what is actually fiscally constrained that we can pay for. And as we've done our financial plan, we identify the revenue projections by available use. So for instance, our sales tax is eligible for transit improvements, a portion of it, whereas our fuel tax is eligible only for roadway improvements. So we've balanced this based on what our funding sources can be used for. And does that answer your question?
And on the roadway projects, I mean, there's a whole bunch listed with dollar numbers. Are the revenues identified for all those? And that'll be the fiscal constraint?
Yes, the roadway projects, we do have an unfunded needs list. For instance, we anticipate the need for additional improvements on 395, 20 years out that we cannot, show the revenue available for at this time. So we identify those as unfunded needs, but the projects that we were just looking at here, those are in the fiscally constrained plan.
I'm gonna cut this just for 1 minute because we have a gentleman making a presentation after you that's got a time restraint, and so he's going to be leaving. If you could stay a few minutes to answer some questions, maybe follow up when we finish.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'm done, and I'll try and follow up next time
Okay.
I see her.
Okay, you don't need to stay. Thank you. We can get the questions to you if we got anything.
Thank you.
The Superintendent of Schools, Pedro Martinez.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. So today we want to talk quite a bit about a bill, a bill that isn't controversial at all. You probably haven't even heard about it, but we have a little bill out with the legislature about raising capital funding. And normally I would tell you, I would love to just be here talking to you about all the great things we're doing academically. Frankly, actually, even this morning, we just had a nice article in the RGJ about our children that are participating in advanced placement classes. In fact, we as a district are doing almost double of our fair share of children being in advanced placement classes in the state. It's the first time next year Nevada is not ranking last in education. We're actually ranking at the average, but as a district, over more than a fourth of our children are in advanced placement classes and are actually passing their AP exams and are college and career ready. And I'm very proud of that, and it's another symbol, and we're the leaders in the state. And we represent 15% of the children in the state, but yet we represent more than a fourth of the children that are in these advanced placement classes. So something that gives me a lot of pride. I wish I could just spend the whole hour just talking about those type of things that we're doing. But today I'm here in front of you talking to you about our needs that we have with our facilities. When I became superintendent in August of last year, one of the things that I wanted to look at is anything that could derail us as a district. I had been the deputy superintendent here in 2009. I knew all the reforms we had started. I was one of the authors of our strategic plan. And so I wanted to see, was there anything since I had left that, again, could make us vulnerable? And the area that I found was capital funding. And then the reason being because when you look at the age of our buildings, especially compared to other districts such as the South, we have some of the oldest buildings in the state. More than a fourth of our buildings are at least 50 years old. This morning I was at an elementary school, Roy Gom Elementary, beautiful community. I love that neighborhood, but it's one of our oldest schools. It was built in the 50s. And we have more than half of our schools that are 30 years old, and that's what's creating the urgency and the need for capital funding in our district. So we decided as part of the legislative process, we get one bill that we can submit to the legislature. And after quite a bit of debate and conversations with our board, frankly, with many of our community leaders, we reached out to our legislators. We reached out to our business leaders. And we just talked about it. We said, look, here's the issue we have, and here's the issue that could derail our reforms. And at the end, after many conversations, we all decided that we needed to put in our own capital bill. Frankly, as a first-year superintendent, I don't know if it's that smart to try to raise taxes in your first year. I have a 2.5-year-old that was born here in Reno. I'm hoping to have a long career, so I'm hoping this doesn't change that. But I saw that the need was so grave that we felt we had no choice. And for us, it really, really for us, it's really about making sure that we invest in our buildings. These are public assets. We have over 100 buildings, over 7 million of square feet. So not only are we the largest employer in the county, we also are one of the largest real estate holders in the county. And unfortunately, because of the age of buildings, I mean, again, they just have significant needs. And one of the questions that I get is, well, Pedro, how did they get to this point? And I'll tell you, this is what I'm seeing. We've been able to, it's in these slides. Since 2002, we've been able to raise money through what we call a rollover bond. And frankly, we get a certain portion of property taxes that are dedicated for us to be able to take out bonds and fix our buildings. We've raised, in fact, over $500 million, of which some of those funds are still being used right now. Most our construction periods happen during the summer, so we have big construction projects scheduled for this summer as well as the summer of 14. And the reality was that, the plan was that, as the funds, got used, in 2008, we were going to go to the voters, or in 2012, to renew the funding stream. And frankly, if we would have been able to do that, I wouldn't be here in front of you. Here's what happened. Our state got into the deepest recession that we've ever seen in our state's history, probably in our nation's history here in Nevada. The real estate values went down so much, and I'll show you a chart in a second, that frankly, we just have no access to revenues. And, I wish we would have had a separate funding source to be able to maintain our buildings, but our district has never been able to do that. And so we've always been dependent on our rollover bond. And because of the just real estate values, we just have no access to any revenues, literally none. Right now, this gives you a sense of how we've allocated this $551 million. And you can see over time, over the last decade, we've actually built new schools. So, for example, when you look at the Spanish Springs area, the South Reno area, many parts of the Northwest Reno area, we've built some new schools. And that's frankly because our district has grown. Our district has grown over the last 10 years. And so for us, you can see the dollars that we have set aside. Again, we have still some projects that are being done over the next 2 summers. In addition, I want to thank you for all the work we've done with the city of Reno, where you've given us access to various funding sources, including recovery zone bonds, and we've been able to leverage those resources as well so that we could, again, just strengthen our capital program, and we've been able to invest in our community. So this is the chart that I wanted to share with you. So the blue bar is the revenues. The red bar is what right now is we're paying off bonds. This is what we pay on an annual basis. And when you see between 2012 and 2020, those two lines are so close together, what that tells us is that we don't have there's no space really for us to raise revenues to be able to go out and do additional bonding. So normally what would have happened if we wouldn't have had the recession, that blue bar would have continued to rise. We would have had a nice amount of space where we would have went to the voters in 2012 and said, we want to go ahead and renew this tax rate, and we want to use these revenues to go ahead and bond. And we would have been able to bond at least $100 to $200 million. Again, I wouldn't be here in front of you. We'd continue with our capital plan. We'd continue to revitalize our buildings. Because that line is so short, and you can see we don't get any space in between those two lines until about 2020 and further on, we literally have no access to any revenues. And by the way, we're one of the few counties in the state that doesn't have where we don't have other revenue sources to be able to maintain our buildings. So we call this a Christmas tree chart. So what this shows you is all the different counties in the state, and all of the counties have a dedicated property tax for rollover bond. So that's that first column. All of us have that. In the second column, we also get what we call the government service tax, which is a very small amount of revenues. It's about $1.5 million a year. We get that. But then when you go to the other columns, you can see Washoe, which is the first line, it's all red. So we have no other revenue sources for our buildings. Now, other counties have been able to get other revenue sources over time, and by the way, all of these are driven by the legislature. And so back, 2002, even before, some of the counties were able to get the legislature to pass other revenue sources for them. We weren't able to. As a result, literally, as I sit in front of you, I have buildings where roofs are having to be replaced, pipes that are freezing, and literally except for our rollover bonds, we have no other revenue sources. The total need that we have right now is roughly about $511 million. So the $511 million includes everything. So we already know right now that, over the next 5 to 10 years, I'm going to have to build some new schools. I can tell you right now, when I go to South Reno, I'm seeing more and more families move in there. We have some of the largest elementary schools in South Reno, as well as a very large middle school with the Poly Middle School. As I go to Spanish Springs, we just did a rezoning. Again, very large schools, more families that are moving into Spanish Springs. I'm right now having conversations with our Westergaard community because in the northwest side of Reno, we're growing again. More homes are being built, more homes are being bought. I'm having more children moving in. And frankly, if EDON has their way and they bring in the companies they want to bring in, I'm going to have more families in our schools. So in our needs, we've already anticipated the need for more schools. But the vast majority of the $511 million is literally what we call capital rehab or capital revitalization projects. And this chart is a little bit hard to read, but let me just quote a couple of numbers for you. These are the needs for repairs and major repairs and maintenance that we have for the next 10 years. And so you see a column there that says expired, which is $44.8 million. That's the number, those are the systems we have, and then we have it by site improvements, we have roofing, interior finishes, all the way through electrical systems. That's how much of our systems have actually, where their life is already expired. So if we had a roof that had a life of 20 years, we're already in the 22nd, 23rd, 24th year. There's $44 million right now where those systems, we're literally waiting for them to break, literally, because their life is already expired. There's another, the next column is expired but serviceable. So there's been some systems that literally we've been doing some work on them to just try to extend them. So they've already reached their life as well, but we've been able to do fixes on them so we can extend another year, another 2 years. So literally just those two columns alone, there's $160 million where literally these systems, again, are breaking down. I'll give you an example. During the Christmas break, we had a high school that almost didn't open up on time because the heating system went out. And this winter was a pretty harsh winter, and literally we were working around the clock trying to get the heating system going to get the high school opened on time. That's what I'm literally dealing with, is $160 million. And by the way, this is not, the luxuries. This is not putting in, computers and tablets, with our children. This is roofs. These are windows. These are heating systems. These are air conditioning systems. That is what we're dealing with. This schedule shows you the need for the next 10 years. Again, this is the largest component of our $511 million need. And again, our buildings are old. And, people have asked me, well, Pedro, is it because you guys didn't manage the resources that you received so far? And I would say, no, that's not true at all. In fact, when I look at the projects we've done, the vast majority of projects, we've been under budget. We've actually gotten more money, more value for our dollar. And I came from Chicago, and in Chicago, I was able to oversee capital budgets of well over $1 billion a year, by the way, because Chicago is just such a big city. And I'll tell you, the value that we get here in our community is amazing to me. And I can also share with you that, again, if the recession wouldn't have occurred, I wouldn't even be here in front of you. That was the initial plan. The plan was to, with real estate values that were rising, we would have been able to generate enough revenue so we could have went to the voters for another rollover bond. But when the real estate market crashed, and we're all still suffering from that revenue became closed to us, and we have no other revenues. So here's what our proposed solution is. So we're proposing, and by the way, again, we debated this quite a bit. So we said we need to go to the legislature and ask for a revenue source. So what is the right revenue source? So we went through every single one of the different taxes that are available to other counties and other districts, and these are the ones we landed on. We decided that we would propose an increase to sales tax by 0.25%, and we would increase property taxes by a nickel. By the way, that's a nickel over the current cap that exists because our community is capped at 366, and that we would be able also just have the flexibility to take our current government service tax revenue and be able to bond that. We get $1.5 million that would allow us, if we wanted to go and bond it, generate $15 million that we could then use to do some major revitalizations. Altogether, it would generate $20 million a year. Keep in mind, our need is $511 million. It represents $8 per month per family. And as I would say, it's 8 months per family per month to keep our children safe, warm, and dry. By the way, I have gotten many emails and phone calls of, Pedro, why did you go for such a small amount? $20 million. I mean, you got a $511 million need, $166 million of things you got to fix right now, and you're asking for $20 million. And my response is very simple. We are very sensitive to the fact that our economy is still recovering. For us to go out and ask for a large tax increase when I know that families are still struggling with their homes, I know that individuals are still unemployed. We still have one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. That would, in my opinion, that would not be responsible for us. And so this is the minimum that we need. I wish it could be less, but right now with $160 million of systems that I'm just waiting to break, if I can at least get this $20 million, we could be proactive, and that way we're not spending top dollar, because my fear is that as systems are breaking down, I'm paying for overtime, I'm paying for people to work on weekends, because I gotta have these schools up and running. You know, one of the challenges that I have as a superintendent, I can't go to our community and say, hey, can you just keep your kids at home for a year? You know, just keep them at home. You know, we're going to fix things. You know, we'll fix things academically. We'll fix things with our buildings. We'll figure out a way how to repair these systems. I can't do that. I don't have that choice. Our children are dependent on us to make sure that our buildings are safe, warm, and dry. Our families are dependent on us to make sure that our buildings are open and that they serve their children in the best way possible. So many of these things I've already covered. Like I said, the $20 million would be used to just continue our investment in our buildings. And here's the thing I'll share with you, you know, and so we testified on this bill 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday, and one of the things that I was very proud of is that we were not alone. There was about 100 people in the room. We've gotten the endorsements of every major industry group, including the Chamber of Commerce, EDON. Every major industry group has been behind us, and they've endorsed us. In fact, you know, what I was even more proud of is that we had 3 entities, and I won't mention them by name, but these are the most anti-tax entities in our state, where some of my colleagues in other parts of the state have gotten attacked and gotten into huge fights with these entities. All 3 entities testified, were neutral on the bill, and said, well, we acknowledge the need that Washoe County has. And Washoe County has a very different need than other parts of the state. And I was very proud of that. But I'll tell you, we had teachers, parents, our industry groups. We had our 4 legislators from the northern, from our community, Democrat and Republican, sitting together, taking the hardest questions, not the district. They were taking the hardest questions from their colleagues right there in front of us. In fact, somebody even said, we got to take a picture of this. We've never seen this before, where you have Republican and Democrat, Assembly and Senate together, unified on this issue. So again, it just shows you not only that the need that we have and how we've been able to communicate it, but also the fact that, again, we haven't been alone. We've done our homework. And again, I wouldn't be here in front of you if this wasn't a desperate need. So I think I'm going to stop here and not take any questions you have. The only other thing I'll mention is that our legislators did decide to make an amendment to the bill. So the amendment also, and then frankly what it does is it adds an extra step. It doesn't change the substance of the bill in any way. It's the same exact revenues. But normally, if the legislature approved this bill, it would just become law. It would become a tax. We start generating the revenues. What the legislature has asked is that not only does it have to be approved by the legislature, but then it also has to be approved by our board to enact the bill. And that would, and then of course, and then after that, it will become law. So again, be happy to take any questions on either that aspect of and it's an amendment that just got introduced. I'd be happy to ask questions about that amendment as well as the bill itself, the original bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Ms. Zadra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Peter, thank you for being here. I was asking the city manager some of these questions a couple of weeks ago, and that's why the invitation to you, trying to just get, a better understanding. My reference point that would be good as a kind of a barometer to help evaluate just what the needs are is, and you made a quick reference to it, the city was a facilitator for some of the federal funding that you got 3 years ago. I don't remember that amount, Maureen, and maybe you do. But we were able to facilitate, you actually were one of the biggest recipients that was able to actually utilize that federal resource. I'd like to know, how was that spent? What did you achieve? What was the dollar figure you got, and what did you achieve to bring some reality or or validation to the figures you're talking about today.
With your permission, I would bring our chief accountant, Tom Sasinski, because he has those specific details. So the federal funding, again, was very helpful. What it did, just from a big picture perspective, just so our community knows, it didn't provide actual money for capital. What it did, it provided us a way to save on interest, because we were able to get low-interest bonds, and that, frankly, is a huge savings for us. But again, I'm going to ask Tom Sasinski, with your permission, to talk specifically about some of the projects we're able to do and that we're still doing.
Mayor Cashel, members of the City Council, Tom Sazinski, Chief Accountant, as Mr. Martinez just said. We did issue $21.5 million of recovery zone economic development bonds through your ability to grant that to us. We've since spent $17.6 million on projects associated with our schools in the city of Reno. As we did point out, we saved $5 million worth of interest for taxpayers on that. Those projects include school revitalizations and school renewals, things from roofing, asbestos abatement, just zone economic recovery bonds, or those types of projects. And so that's what we've done with what you've granted us with those funds. I'd be glad to answer any specific questions if you had them.
So it's really no different than what you need now. It still is capital improvements is how you spent those. So, I mean, of the list, if you had, and I'm a product of one of the oldest schools, because you've mentioned it, not you, but your predecessor before, over in Sparks on Rock Boulevard.
Yes.
You know, and you know the one. We know the conditions exist.
Sure.
We see those pictures all the time. But the public needs to see, okay, so you were able to facilitate about 17. What did you accomplish with that? How many of that list, if you had 27 schools that needed repairs, were you able to solve and move on to the next 7? Did you get 7 taken care of? I'm looking for that kind of information.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things we've done on our website. We actually have a list of all of our projects that we've accomplished through our rollover bond. It's on our website. But also, even more importantly, we have every school listed now on our website and what the needs are. So in other words, this chart that you're seeing here, we have it now at the school level. So you can actually see, when I talk about $44 million of systems that have expired, you can actually see which schools those are. You can actually see, when I talk about $160 million in total over the next 2 years, you can actually see school by school that Roy Gom, for example, has one of the oldest roofs that we're going to have to replace. Or that Sparks High School, we just recently we had to replace windows because the children were literally freezing. And so those are things that we have put on our website. What we'll do, though, and be more deliberate about is we'll be very specific with this source of funding, because it was a very generous gift that you gave us as a city of Reno. And so we will list out those specific projects, but know that the money was used where our biggest need is at, which was literally capital rehab and replacing these systems. Because with $300 million worth of need, again, with 100 buildings, 7 million square feet, frankly, that's where the priority has been. But we will be happy to put those specific details of those specific projects, and we'll send them to you, and also make sure that we highlight those on our website, because we have the information on our website, but we can highlight it in a better way.
I think that needs to be shown.
Sure, absolutely.
There was a dedicated funding amount, and what did you achieve with it? I think
Absolutely.
that's why, unfortunately, the bond issues have not passed in the past.
Sure.
Have not been approved in the past. How about that?
Absolutely.
Because people just haven't had the confidence that it's actually been applied and that it's making a difference.
Okay, absolutely.
Ms. Brackett.
Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Your year over count date, what were your numbers district-wide, percentage-wise?
Sure. So enrollment, we were just about a couple hundred children above our projections. We came in enrollment, this is with our traditional schools, about 62,400. When you include our charters, we're just almost at 65,000.
So you've been flatlining for maybe 3 or 4 years, pretty much.
We have been stable for the last couple of years in enrollment, but this year we did see a tick up of 100 children. So in
Okay.
other words, we did increase, and again, we see it won't be dramatic, but we do see increases over the next few years.
Okay. A question I have is, this does not appear to be limited to revitalization of old schools. It seems like it can be used for new construction of new schools. Is that my understanding, that that there's room in here to build new schools if you decided to build new schools?
So we're not restricted by the way the current bill is written, but I will tell you that the intended use of those dollars are to address this $308 million need and the $160 million that's already coming due in the next 2 years. So that's always been the purpose for the funding. It's one of the reasons why, frankly, for example, if I was going to build new schools, I would ask for a lot more money. I mean, frankly, I would actually, in fact, and what we've said, Councilwoman, is that what the goal of these resources is for us to get proactive on these huge capital replacements that we have to make, or roofs and windows, heating systems, air conditioning, et cetera, so that when we get to 2020, which is when we feel we'll be able to go back to the voters and we'll have room to be able to use our rollover bonds again, then we can use it for the bigger projects, including new schools, including new construction. So the intention of this money is not to have any new construction, because frankly, $20 million wouldn't get us very far.
Well, why don't you amend out that discretion? Because, representing the old schools, you see some numbers, and you mentioned you don't have some funding sources, but you heard the builders here. They want impact fees for fire stations, and I think you have impact fee authority under statute, don't you?
I'll ask, actually, I may ask Mr. Stonzinski to answer that question.
Back to the Christmas tree chart that we went through, impact fees aren't available for Washoe County School District currently.
They've been excluded. It's not that the enabling legislation does not exist?
Not currently.
Okay. And then, when we come on, we're all sit on committees here, and I was assigned to the School Facilities Oversight Committee, and I called your Capital Projects Division, and they said, we're going to get rid of that through the legislature and the bill. Is that committee going to be thrown out? And the reason I ask is, we provide so many services to you. In so many ways, and it's good for us to have a relationship when you're citing schools or doing expansions, because, that link is important.
So we don't have any bills right now eliminating that structure, and as you said, it's been very helpful for us. One of the things that the community doesn't realize is that we have several structures in place that actually help us to be accountable with the dollars, including the Bond Oversight Committee. And frankly, this is, and somebody said it earlier, one of the things that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is making sure that our community really understands all the projects we've done. Sometimes, in our district, we're sort of the best kept secret in our community because we do a lot of good things and our staff just work very hard. And we're going to be very deliberate to make sure people know, here's the money and again, we have it on our website now, but we're gonna go out and actually just be more intentional about making sure our community knows that, look, here's what we've been able to do. Here's the promises that we made back in 2002 with the original rollover funding. And by the way, here's how we exceeded those commitments. And, the structures that we have in place have been a big part of helping us to make sure that we're accountable. So there's no legislation right now proposed to remove any of those structures.
And my final question is, there's another bill that's been proposed, not by you, but it preempts local zoning authorities, and I don't want to dwell on that, but I want to dwell on a point that, in researching that, the school district has the ability, I understand, through the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan to have a school facilities plan that would be something that all the jurisdictions could understand what your plans and your intents are, and that you all have never done that and participated in that forum with us. And does that ring a bell? Has that come up at all?
Not for me. I don't know if, Mr. Stonzinski, if you know.
No, I don't.
Yeah, so sorry. So we'd have to get back to you on that. Yeah, I don't have an answer on that.
Mr. Delgado.
Yes, Mr. Martinez, thanks for coming and giving us the information. It means a lot. What I've been able to do over the last few weeks is work with some of the schools in Ward 3, going out talking to parents. So I totally understand. I believe that the community is starting to understand the need and what you guys have been trying to accomplish over the years. So thank you for that. Not so much more of a question, but kind of general idea. In the next few, is there any major rehabs in some of the older schools, or is that going to be I've heard conversation where there'd be total knockdown of schools and rehab of or how do you feel about that with some of the older schools?
So unfortunately, and again, we still have resources that we're planning to use over the next 2 summers. We don't have enough money to build a new school or to completely tear down a building and bring it back up. So what we're focusing on is doing an average $3 to $5 million major revitalization. So for example, we have schools like Sierra Vista, which is now going to be called the Dorothy Lemelson STEM Academy, that is one of our oldest buildings. And the way we prioritize our buildings is we literally look at age first, but then we also look at the community and the student achievement of the building. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're also taking our lowest performing academic schools and prioritizing them, again, as long as they're the oldest buildings. So, and the reason I share that is, for example, when I was at Roy Gom today, Kay Ann, who's an amazing principal, we were talking about the fact that she has one of the oldest buildings in our district, but we don't have enough resources to revitalize her school. So she's not we don't have it on any list. And again, this school was built in the 50s. Why? Because she's a 5-star, high-achieving school. And so unfortunately, because we just don't have the money, we can't do all of our old buildings, and we're prioritizing our in some of our schools, some of the highest poverty areas. And that's because, again, we know that these buildings affect student achievement. Now, Kay Ann has been able to do an amazing job, and that community has really rallied around her, and they fundraise for technology in the classrooms. But even she said herself, she said, Pedro, I can't ask the families to fundraise for a roof. I mean, they can fundraise for computers, they can fundraise for tablets. And so unfortunately, that's the challenge, Councilman. But we are revitalizing old buildings such as Sierra Vista. Another one, for example, is Natchez Elementary School that we have an Indian reservation. So these are some of our oldest buildings. And the reason we revitalize them is because it's actually more cost effective to try to replace these systems at the same time. Because if we do one system at a time, it's just like your home. It's just very expensive. If you can bundle these, we get actually more for our dollar.
Any other questions right now? Thank you very much. We really appreciate the overview.
Thank you, Mayor Cashel.
And good luck to you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, now we'll move to the consent agenda. Any items you want to pull for discussion? Chair will entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Have a motion, second. Have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. At this time, we'll go to public hearings, item F1. Madam Secretary, have all the notices been sent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, proper notice was given and no correspondence was received.
Staff?
Well,
okay, go ahead.
this is Bill number 6849, an ordinance amending the Reno Municipal Code, Title 18, Annexation and Land Development, Chapter 18.06, Administration and Procedures, Section 18.06405, entitled Special Use Permit, Chapter 18.08, Zoning, Section 18.08201, entitled Permitted Uses by Base Zone District, and Section 18.08.202 entitled Additional Regulations for Principal Uses to Impose Additional Restrictions Consistent with the First Amendment of the United States Constitution on City Council's discretion when considering adult businesses together with other matters properly relating thereto.
Do I have a motion? Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Refer.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously.
I believe, Mr. Mayor, it's a motion to refer. This is the first
Refer,
reading.
yep, motion to refer. And I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item F2.
This is Bill number 6850, an ordinance amending the Reno Municipal Code, Title 18, Annexation and Land Development, Chapter 18.08, Zoning, Section 18.08201, entitled Permitted Uses by Base Zone District, Section 18.02, Section 18.08202, entitled Additional Regulations for Principal Uses, Section 18.08302, entitled Special Purpose Base Zoning District, Section 18.08402, entitled Airport Safety General Overlay Districts, and Section 18.08406, entitled Neighborhood Planning Area Overlay Districts, Chapter 18.12, General Development and Design Standards, Section 18.12.1102, entitled Off-Street Parking Requirements, Chapter 18.24, Rules of Measurement and Definitions, Section 18.24.111, entitled Distance or Spacing Requirements, Section 18.24.203.1450, entitled Convenience Store, and Section 18.24.203.4520, entitled Service Station, to limit the sale of alcohol within the Midtown District and disassociated the allowed accessory gas sales from convenience stores, and to amend the definition and change the phrase service station to gas station to better reflect the allowed use together with other matters properly relating thereto.
Motion to refer. Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Yes, ma'am, you had something to say?
Claudia Hanson, Planning and Engineering Manager. Just for clarification on that, it is still in the description to address the alcohol issue within Midtown, but staff did recommend that we pull that portion out and address that at a later time citywide.
Item F3. Madam Secretary, all the notice have been sent.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, proper notice was given, no correspondence was received.
Okay.
And this is Bill number 6851, an ordinance amending the Reno Municipal Code, Title 18, Annexation and Land Development, Chapter 18.12, General Development and Design Standards, Section 18.12.304, entitled Residential Adequacy Standards, together with other matters properly relating thereto.
Motion? Motion to refer. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item F4.
And for the record, proper notice was given, no correspondence received.
Thank you very much. All right.
Yes, Renee Runges, Director of Human Resources. Mr. Mayor, council members, city manager, what you have before you is an amendment to the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Reno and the Reno Fire Department Administrators Association. And what this agreement would institute, if approved, is a 4896 work schedule, which would be a change in work schedule from the current one that the battalion chiefs are, the suppression battalion chiefs are working. And this schedule is one that was approved in the contract, labor contract between the City of Reno and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 731, 2 years ago. And what this would do is put the supervisors of the employees in the firefighter, equipment operator, and captain ranks on the same shift to provide for greater continuity in operations. And there is no cost to this item. It would just basically bring the shifts in line with the two groups.
Chief, you have anything?
Mr. Mayor, City Manager Klinger, members of the council, just as a point of historical reference, what occurred during the negotiation process approximately a year and a half ago was that the RFDAA had reached an agreement with the city leadership at the time. Subsequent to that, the International Association of Firefighters, Local 731, they were still in negotiations, and at the last part of their negotiation process requested a change in their shift schedule. What the intent of this side letter is, to, like as Renee mentioned, was to bring the management side of the organization in alignment with the labor side. Right now, you have battalion chiefs that are on one shift, they're off the next, and you have the same personnel working a 48-hour block of time. So we have something of a disconnect with respect to management and oversight. So this would bring both the management of the organization and the labor side of the organization in alignment.
Gives you a better operation.
Continuity of management, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Dortch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I'm okay with moving forward with this, but why wouldn't we just take the hours off and make that a management decision?
That's certainly an option that we could explore. Typically, when they write when a side letter is written verbatim out of the existing language. But that could be something that we could come back and look at.
I mean, I just don't think I personally, and I don't think it should be in the FF contract either. I think it should be up to you on how you manage your department as far as how the shifts work.
I agree with that.
I don't disagree with that. I just think for the time being, we go ahead with this, but.
Problem is, once we put it in, you never get it out.
But is it in there now?
Yes.
No.
Their current shift is.
There's
Right.
current
Their current
shift
hour.
hour. We're just switching hours out. I mean, I agree with you entirely.
Again, Mike Hernandez, Reno Fire Chief for the record. We do have in both labor groups contracts, they are very specific with respect to hours of performance and hours of work and both the labor and.
Right, and I don't think it should be in there personally. I think that should be a management decision.
But with this, can this solve it at this point?
And we address that.
But once you put it in, you're never gonna, it's almost impossible to get it out.
Actually, if I may interject here, work schedules and work hours are a mandatory subject of bargaining in the state of Nevada under the NRS 288.
But it could say that it's up to management.
That's correct, but that's why
It doesn't have to
been
spell it
included.
out. It could say it's a management decision.
That's correct. But that's why it's been included in the contract the way it has been.
So are you making a motion or a suggestion that this thing get rewritten to specify what you're saying?
Well, I think you want to get on this shift right away is what you're trying to get to, Chief?
Yes.
And without this letter, you can't get there?
Correct. It'd be very
But can
beneficial.
we make this, can we approve this for a limited time? And you can negotiate and go back and see if we can get what I'm asking for? Instead of putting the time, instead of approving it permanently, say, we'll approve this letter for, I don't know, give you 30 days to see if we can actually get some language that I'm looking for that gives the authority back to management.
Give them 60 days.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Klinger.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, Councilman Dortch, the current agreement actually expires June 30th of this year. Anyway, so I mean, you could.
But it
you could
becomes
make-
part of their contract.
But you could have this provision, I suppose, expire June 30th and then negotiate it as part of the next round of negotiations. Just a.
If you're comfortable with
a
that.
Suggestion.
If you think that accomplishes what I'm looking for.
Chief, how do you?
Well, my primary concern is to get the shifts.
Right, I understand that.
This
And
would
I don't
be
think
the intent
anyone's opposed to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think if we could do it through the end of the current agreement and then have it expire with the current agreement, then we could try and negotiate that as part of the new agreement.
So let's assume we don't, not knowing, but let's assume we don't get it done.
This goes away.
An agreement done by July 1st, and we're.
Back to square one.
And then we'd be
This
right.
goes away.
Would this go with it? Because their contract is perpetual, is
Well,
the argument.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is that this goes away June 30th.
This goes away June 30th,
Right.
yes, this letter. Okay, I'm fine with that.
All right,
So there would be some editorial changes made to the agreement.
yes.
But may I ask a question?
Sure.
Mayor? But if this goes away June 30th, it just resorts to that old schedule.
Right. And
But
then at that
so
time,
that's why it's important that we get the contract done before July 1st.
Okay.
then at that time, if it goes away, then we can make it go back to where the chief has the discretion.
Well, he doesn't have the discretion
No,
now.
doesn't have it now. Okay.
But everyone agrees that they need to go to the schedule, so I
Right.
think this would be the time to
Try to
change
work
it if we
that.
want to make the change.
Just as a point of clarification, so we're going to include language that this particular side letter sunsets June 30th.
Right.
Okay, this year.
So
And
that
you-
will
Are
need
you
to
okay with
be-
that, Chief?
That'll need to be part of the motion.
How do you feel, chief?
Well, again, my concern, Mr. Mayor, is just to get continuity of management within
Right.
the organization, and, I'll take what I can get at any point. But the battalion chiefs, it is a challenge for the battalion chiefs.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to see.
Right.
Some action.
Well,
taken.
let's-
And that's why I don't want to delay this today, if we can
Right.
figure out.
I think if it sunsets.
Right.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion to approve that with the sunset of June 30th of 2013.
You want to put in the negotiations?
We put in the sunset.
Okay,
Yeah,
the sunset,
that's-
okay.
right.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second, all in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll go to item H1.
Resolution number 7820, resolution donating $15,000 to Art Town for sponsorship of opening and closing night of the 2013 festival by the Reno Arts and Culture Commission.
We have any discussion on this? Nettie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nettie Oliverio, Vice Chair of the Arts and Culture Commission, which 18 years ago created the Festival of Art Town. We are so very proud of Art Town for, of course, initially fulfilling the prime directive of that creation, which was to increase the desirability and the feeling of safety for folks to come downtown. Those of us who have been in this community for more than 20 years remember what downtown looked like before. And the advent of Art Town, bringing people down for a month every year, as well as the arts and culture businesses that have grown up in the downtown area as a feeling of that continuity, and the businesses peripheral to all of that, have changed our downtown area 180 degrees. We're very proud of that. Also, one thing that we did not anticipate is how Reno has become viewed by the outside world, by regional, national, and international visitors as a result of what Art Town is and how it's viewed throughout the artistic community of the world. That's a cool thing. We're glad to have it. That is why, that and other things are why we at the Commission devote a portion of our budget every year to the sponsorship of opening night and now this year closing night as well for the same dollars. What it does for us is not only allow us to help pay for the entertainment on July 1 and July 31, but it also gives an opportunity for the Commission and the Council to be able to talk about to a gathered group of folks, thousands of, enjoying arts and culture, what it is that we do for arts and culture in our community. We talk about our public art. We talk about the changes to the downtown area with the bike racks and the paintings of the signal boxes by artists. We talk about our Tala adventure into the Reno schools to help teachers teach arts and culture to their children. We talk about a whole variety of things that our community does, directed by council and the commission, that encourage increase of just general life, quality of life. We hope that you will approve the $15,000 that we would like to direct toward this again. It's very important to us at the Commission to continue our relationship with Art Town, even though they're a 501c3 standing on their own. They are still our babies. Thank you very much.
I just wanted some clarity on this. This 15,000 is a cash donation, not in kind, correct?
Yes, for the record, this is Christine Fay, Resource Development and Cultural Affairs Manager for the city. That is correct. It is not an in-kind. They actually don't close streets or use any city services. They rent the park and they provide their own security. So this is a cash contribution to them.
And this is on top of the 125 that's already been?
That is correct.
125,000, okay. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Second.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item H2.
Resolution number 7821, resolution of intent proposing the issuance of and authorizing the publication of notices related to general obligation, limited tax, capital improvement refunding bonds, additionally secured by pledged revenues, for the purpose of refinancing certain outstanding bonds of the city and providing other matters properly related thereto.
Any questions?
I do have a question, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right.
Hi, Mr. Chisel. I know this is a multi-step process, and this is maybe the second or third time you've come forward to us related to this process. What's next?
Robert Chisel, Finance Director for the record. Next is we do a 90-day public notice. After that 90 days, probably the next step you're going to see is us coming back with any public comments for you to make a decision as to where to go next.
Okay. I guess, between the last time and this time, I've had a chance to read the operating agreements related to each of these three facilities that would be backed by this bond instrument. And my question with respect to the ballroom one is, that's property that we purchased from the operator, the land, to build the facility. Then we built it. And then we entered into an agreement with the operator, who is a for-profit entity, about the operation of it. And it's got a lot of specifics, and we're going to hear something later on that, but it's kind of a cost-sharing sort of thing and so on. And do they have so much interest in this facility? Because it seems like we've extended out our agreement to 15 years with them, and we cannot terminate the agreement. Only they can terminate. We can terminate for breach. They can terminate, I think, because they don't want to do it. Is this still then, have we given so much authority that it's really not a municipal facility eligible for municipal tax exempt bonding?
Robert Chisel, again, for the record. First off, they, I believe, donated the land that the bowling stadium is, or the ballroom is on. Second, there is contingent about what is for profit and not for profit. The operation of these facilities are not making profits at this time, and I don't believe they were foreseen to make profit. The idea was to encourage room stays and visitor stays into the downtown corridor. And so there is no problem with them making a small amount of profit to offset their operating cost, according to the bond ordinance. We do talk with our bond counsel all the time, and we ensure that we are within the IRS rules and regulations.
You had,
actually, I got bond counsel here.
I was going to say.
Hi, Kendra Follett from Sherman and Howard. So this financing, there was a piece that was issued as taxable and a piece that was tax exempt. The part that was tax exempt that financed a portion of the ballroom was within the safe harbor rules under the tax code. So it is being, that facility is not eligible for complete tax exemption, but it is eligible to be financed within the safe harbors which is essentially 10% of a tax exempt financing can be for a bad use. And this would be a bad use, a taxable use under the tax code. And then there was a separate taxable financing for this.
So the tax exempt nature, the amended agreement, which seems to prevail to the operator, who is, I don't know if they're under their tax declarations or taking a loss on this or what. Do you see anything in this amendment that changes the nature of the tax exempt status of this new bonding instrument we're going out? Have you read the new operating agreements and all in context of the bond?
It's treated as taxable. So it's treated as that operating agreement does not comply with the tax code. It's that facility, and the financing for that facility is treated as taxable. So it doesn't really matter. The only thing it could be is become tax exempt, become eligible for tax exempt financing, so that's only in your favor. So it was from the beginning, this management contract was not in compliance with the tax code, so it was a taxable financing.
Okay, and so I guess you're saying you get a certain portion that can be taxable. The bond holders, are they paying tax then, 10%? Do they have a prorated tax rate on these bonds?
There's a completely taxable transaction that's subject, that the interest on those bonds is subject to gross income under the tax code. That's a separate financing that was completely taxable. There's a portion of every tax exempt financing, the rules are complicated, but I'll essentially say up to 10% that can be for bad use. Like if you build a city hall and it has a Starbucks in the bottom, and it's less than 10%, you can still finance the entirety of that thing, but up to the 10% of the tax exempt financing can be a bad use, so a Starbucks, or in this case, a bad management contract. The Downtown Event Center, it has compliant, actually, management contracts for its food service, so those are within the tax exempt regulations. So a portion within the 10% financed a piece of the ballroom, and then there was a separate taxable transaction that financed the ballroom. So it was a multi-source financing for the ballroom.
Okay.
Okay.
Too much information.
Chair will entertain a motion for approval. Move to adopt. I have a second. I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Show the vote unanimous. Item H3.
Resolution number 7822, augmentation revision of the 2012-2013 city budget for the quarter ending December 31st, 2012.
Chair will entertain a motion. Have a motion. Have a second. Have a second. All in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item J, Standard Department Finance Administration. Item J1.
For the record, Jill Olson, Finance. This item comes before council every year according to the agreement that we have with Downtown Management Group to operate the ballroom facility. They bring their budget and their marketing plan to council each year for review and approval by the city council, and that is what this item is. As far as the timing, the goal when the agreement was written was for the item to come before council in December. We're finding that that becomes a challenge for them to get that before their board by December 1. And then with the council's compacted December meetings, to get that on the December agenda has become a challenge. The financial plan was actually ready in December, but the marketing plan was not, and I'll let them explain why that was the case. And then due to our agenda deadlines being 2 weeks before that, our agenda deadline was actually November 28th this year, so we're finding there are some deadline challenges in meeting the terms of that, so we're actually looking at whether an amendment to that agreement might be required in order to get this to you in a more timely manner. January may be a little bit more feasible, so we're looking at that. But today, that is what we're here to do, to have Downtown Management Group present their 2013 budget and marketing plan to you, so that you may review that and hopefully approve that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie Lepre for that presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Lepre. I'm the CFO for Silver Legacy. To give you a little history, the Reno Ballroom opened its doors in February of 2008. It sits on land that was previously owned by MGM Resorts and El Dorado Resorts, who are our joint venture owners. So the three of us formed Downtown Management Company. Silver Legacy is the managing member of that entity, and that's why I'm here before you today. So if there's any background that you would like for the new members, please feel free to ask. What you have before you is the form of budget that we had agreed upon and we've been doing for several years now. And because we're here today in February instead of December, you have actual results for 2012 versus just a projection. So what we've given you here is a comparison for our budget for 13, the actuals for 12, and then for historical purposes, 2011 as well. There is no capital request this year, so you have that schedule that I had sent over to Jill this morning. We have a 10-year budget. There's not a lot on there. On the horizon, like I said, 0 for 13, not much for 14. And beyond, we work with the city engineers in preparing that. Last year, we did request two items that were funded out of the existing capital sub-account. And those two requested items were purchased but came in under budget from what was approved. When you look at this financial statement, you'll see in 2011, we did fund, we being Downtown Management Company and the three entities, funded that sub-account with $157,000 to bring it up to the required $500,000 that sits in there today. So I'll just run through the 2013 numbers. As you know, Reno is still a challenging environment for the tourism industry. We are faced with, meeting planners are looking at more lucrative and premier markets and looking for deals versus coming to the value-oriented Reno market. So that's a challenge that we're dealing with. The ballroom opened in 2008, which was unfortunately also when the recession happened. So it takes time to build up that clientele. So we were dealing with, a couple of things against us in keeping that building, generating as many room nights as we wanted to and as much business in it. However, I will say, and Jeff, our Director of Sales, is here today. He'll speak to the revenues and the marketing plan that comparison to other buildings in town and other convention markets, we're doing a good job on a comparative basis. Cost of sales, payroll, other expenses, they're all within the percentage of revenues that was approved by council last year. We didn't need to come forward and ask for any revisions to the expenses to be approved because they were all within the guidelines under the terms of the contract. If revenues are down, then expenses are proportionately within the guidelines of the budget, then that requirement doesn't fall on us. In the past, the council has wanted to know why this operation was not funding, generating a significant profit that could be used. And traditionally, and Jeff can speak to this as well, ballrooms, standalone ballrooms specifically, but convention centers in general, in of themselves are not a profit center. They're not a, large revenue generator. It's the business it brings to downtown, the room nights it generates. This building complements the Reno Event Center and the bowling stadium in the facilities in downtown, the hotel casinos. So like I said, our goal is to generate room nights, and that's the purpose of this building.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any questions? Ms. Breckus?
Thank you. I guess I have a couple of questions, and I understand that the intent and the purpose is for conventions and night stays. So I guess one of my questions is, what are your 2013-14 prospects for conventions, given the difficulties that we're facing right now? I mean, what kind of niche conventions are you seeking?
Right, and I'll let Jeff speak to that a little bit more when he goes through the marketing plan. But we are, we're looking at more convention business that has a propensity to come to Reno, and maybe drive-in market, since air service sometimes can be challenging to get here. We hear over and over from customers. So we're really targeting through sales, through Jeff's new leadership, working with MGM and El Dorado, our partners, in really targeting those specific groups that would be have a better fit for Reno. Additionally, we're very focused on local social because that is profitable. We compete with all of our friends outside of downtown, and but we do focus there. Last year, we had two different events that were very promising, both from a profile standpoint and bringing new people to downtown. One was the Avicii concert, which, I don't listen to, but it definitely generated a lot of business, and it was profitable for the ballroom. The other one was Winacopia, which was a little bit of a slow start, but again, it was a new event type idea, so we're also aggressively targeting those.
Okay. Do we tend to target's not the right word, open up the possibilities of the use of space, particularly in a down economy like we're in, to the university and the school systems for things that they may need?
We had a lot of political events there last year. We work well, have a great relationship with the university. We have a new sales manager that just came on that is really working the Sterling, we call it the Sterling class or business class group, and the university is one of those main focused targets there, and she has a really good relationship with the planners there as well.
Okay. And I'm probably, does he have
Jeff, you wanna
a
chime
presentation?
in?
Because I'm sure I'm asking questions that he's going to answer.
This is Jeff Globe. He's our new director of sales. He doesn't have all the history, but he is going to bring a lot of fresh, exciting new ideas, and he can talk about his background and a little bit through the marketing plan.
Thank you, Stephanie. And good afternoon. And as Stephanie indicated, my name is Jeff Globe. I'm the Director of Sales for the Silver Legacy Resort and Casino, and I just joined January 21st. So I'm relatively new to the hotel. I am not unfamiliar with Reno and the Tahoe area for skiing and outdoor sports activities. My history stems a long ways around the convention world. I have most recently been in the East Coast working out of Manhattan, but the lion's share of my career path has been with Hilton Hotels and some independent operators that you may have heard of in Las Vegas, such as the Bellagio, Wynn, and Encore Hotels. So back to the marketing plan and some excellent questions that you've had, Ms. Jordan, is that, yes, we are trying to target all possible channels of business for the Reno Ballroom Event Center and, of course, the Silver Legacy and the Triplex Complex. What is important is trying to unclog any channels that we have found hesitation with in the past. As Stephanie indicated regarding our new deployment of geographical allocations for each sales manager, along with targeting certain markets, one of which government has always been successful with us. Unfortunately, with the recent change in their travel policies and possibly the new question issues coming up in March may challenge that stream of business. We are deploying our staff and going after the foundation opportunities that we spoke about, or you spoke about, regarding the universities and nonprofit organizations. To that end, I'm reaching out to create a more robust marketing activity for the hotel. For example, I'm putting together a campaign program with a newsletter and, of course, a mailing brief to the Chicagoland nonprofit and charitable organizations that'll span a 13-week period and get the message across. Now, its impact with this one single campaign may only generate enough business for 2014. So our immediate need is to fulfill the occupancy of that building. In 2010, the building ran approximately 25% occupancy with events and concerts. In 2011 and 12, it showed about 21%. And we are on course right now at a 17% occupancy level. And that occupancy level is based upon an estimated 24 holidays in a year. You take an entertainment group such as a band, they're going to need approximately 2 days for 1 day setup and 1 day teardown. So all of those have to be subtracted out of the available days to book that facility. And what I've come up with the number of groups that have been actually in the building equated to those occupancy numbers that I gave you. As Stephanie pointed out, those aren't bad percentages when you look at an overall size of a facility and the economic impact that we have seen over the last 5 years. So I think currently the ballroom is on course to do very well. And to give you an idea of that, the Nevada Safari Club International dinner is scheduled for Friday, March 15th, and they have exceeded their expectations. There are over 600 people in attendance, which should generate roughly approximately $20,000 in food and beverage revenue. So that's going to add, obviously, a huge influx of individuals coming into the downtown area and hopefully realizing that there's so much more downtown Reno than they've ever seen. It's bringing those people in from the outer areas of the Reno area and to also experience. And our charge is to market to those individuals and co-brand with SCI and hopefully generate a room night package that will actually add more value to the downtown area, and they can stay over for the weekend. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. With the Barrett-Jackson addition to Hot August Nights, is there any events being held at that facility? I know that the main thing's down at the convention center, but
I don't believe the
Barrett-Jackson
Barrett-Jackson activity will be held there because of their need for large space, and they'll have to be utilizing
Yeah, I didn't know if maybe
outdoors.
there was a side event going.
But we are anticipating an added 5 to 10,000 more people coming to Hot August Nights because of that addition of Barrett Jackson. It's a big, big coup for us. It's going to be great.
Great. Thank you.
Jenny?
I guess my question is, how many events were held there? I mean, how full is the schedule there? Like, what's going on there in March?
Okay.
Who's coming in March?
In March, we have a chamber luncheon, the Safari Club chapter that I indicated, and the National Association of College and University Food Services. To answer your question regarding the number of groups, we currently have on the books 53 groups. And in 2012, we held 66 groups. In 2011, we held 69 groups. And in 2010, there were 79 groups.
So, 3 groups in March. I saw that the El Dorado was hosting college boxing this last weekend. When I read the documents related to this, some of the whereases were like it'd be boxing. How does the operator decide when to lease its own space and when to go into this space? Because I also see there's a threshold of when to go across the street to the event center for groups of a certain size. So how do you make those calls?
Great question, because it's based primarily upon the attraction of the fighter themselves. And I have not seen the fight card for Friday night at the El Dorado, but I would have to presume that it's not a robust selection of boxers. Probably local candidates, maybe Western geographically located, that don't and are not carrying a big name. I actually worked in the boxing community at the Las Vegas Hilton for many years, and so we judge the venue that we're going to use based upon the star quality of the boxer. So when you have a Mike Tyson, for example, you're going to need an arena upwards of 10,000 people. But if you have a Jeff Globe and a Stephanie fighting, 100 people is probably all you're going to get at that venue. So if the El Dorado had some big names on that card, then they would, yes, want to start moving it over to the ballroom and or the event center. So just such as on Super Bowl weekend, we held Sticks in the ballroom, the exhibit hall downstairs in the Silver Legacy. But on Saturday night, we had The Who, which generated over 7,000 attendees at the event center. So it's just based upon the name quality that you have coming to the table.
Okay, and Mr. Manager, Stephanie mentioned that they funded the operating account of $50,000. Did we put in our share of that this year also?
For the record, Jill Olson, it only needs to be funded up to $500,000 at this point. So the initial contribution was what was left over from the construction account. And then it was short the 157, and the downtown management group was required to put the remainder to bring it up to the 500,000.
It was in non-compliance since construction in terms of the $500,000 that's supposed to be maintained.
Well, they put that in 2011, and so they put it in when we came up with the balance. We were finishing up, figuring out what the balance remaining was, and we sent them a bill for the difference, and they paid it.
Okay, so now it's at $500,000.
And that's where it's required to be.
And we're not bleeding it down this calendar year.
Well, they've not put in a request for capital. Public Works we have not seen, or at least Finance has not seen, what Public Works may or may not put in during the budget cycle.
Okay.
There may be capital needs that they may put in during this 13-14 request.
And whatever gets spent, we have to share with them to build it up.
Well, there's a funding formula within the contract that states how that gets replenished.
Okay, I guess, the issue is, and this gets back to our previous item on the bond, is this is backed by a bond that we're spending among the 3 properties almost $3 million a year out of our general revenue fund. We hope that goes through when we get this new bond instrument. It was never anticipated that the general public of Reno, general dollars, would be supporting these assets. And so it is of concern to us because it means, pool roofs that can't get done, it's our staffing, it's big. And I just see in 2011, we extended out this relationship for 15 years with you. And the terms are very favorable to you and not to us to relook at this asset. And so I'm wondering from your side, how useful is this to your operations? Because it sure doesn't look useful to our operations from what I'm seeing. I mean, maybe it's bringing in stuff people here or there, but it seems like there's a big availability of event space and not enough events to fill it.
Well, the historical funding is one side of it, I understand, but the operating component, the city is not on the hook for, as I know with other public facilities, nor that funding, as long as if there isn't a profit, we are always obligated to fund that capital account up to the 500,000. So going forward, the exposure is not there. I understand the historical component of it, and I think our answer is we all have the same goal. We want to generate tourism. We want to bring people to downtown. We want sales tax dollars. We want room tax. We want, and this building, and Jeff can speak to it as well, being the accountant, but there are a lot of groups that we would not have come to downtown Reno if we did not have this facility. We don't have enough space at our property. Harrah's doesn't, Circus doesn't, El Dorado doesn't, the Sands doesn't. And it complements the event center, which is also owned by the city. So to utilize the event center and get some of that trade exhibit space utilized there, you need this ballroom to complement it. So it really is a cohesive piece to the whole picture. And I think we all do feel strongly that is very important for Reno. I mean, the last thing you want is something else shut down. It's a beautiful building. I think it presents well. We have customers that love it, and it does help us compete. There's Native American casinos. There's another one opening up in the end of this year. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be able to bring those convention groups in, which generate your highest average daily rates, bring people in from all over, the country, not just the typical drive-in that deal with snow and those obstacles as well. So.
And I appreciate that, and I know I'm putting you on the spot. I guess I have one question from the bond perspective is, having heard this operational nature of this that has shifted so much from when we originally went out to bond on it, will the bond buyers or the rating agents or anyone as we go through the underwriting process look at this a little differently, knowing that this is 1/3 of the backed assets?
Robert Chisel again. I believe, the bond rating agencies don't tell us how they rate the bonds, but indication always are that they will look at the source of the revenue and our abilities to make the payments of those revenues, particularly for this bond. So what they're going to look at is the operation of the city. They're going to look at the financial stability of the city and the financial stability of those revenue sources.
They won't look at a facility that's, running at 15-20% capacity and say, that's a dark building, we're backing a dark building, practically.
Again, I can't speak for Moody's or Standard & Poor's, so I can only speculate, but they would probably be looking at saying, is the facility being operated and maintained properly? And the answer would be yes. So I haven't had experience where they're going to say it's not up to this full capacity.
If I can just add one comment to this occupancy, that I've come from hotels that have enormous amount of space built and attached to it. And throughout my tenure in those properties, I've always found that my occupancy was no greater than 49 to 52% on any one good year. You have to take into account the holidays, the amount of days for setup and tear down. And my setup and tear downs were very, very conservative, because if you get a Tony Bennett that was in there last year, he's going to have a 3-day setup. What I'm getting at is what occupancies I've seen since 2010 till what we have on the books currently, and there is still a lot of time left in the year to book for the year. The ballroom's doing good. It's generating some traffic. You got to look at the convention facility, for example, down in Las Vegas, which is well over 3 million square feet. And at max, on a good year, they're going to run maybe 69% occupancy. And that's with all 8 cylinders running well. And that's because holidays, move-ins, move-outs, and of course, time for the trade shows to actually happen. So without the ballroom, it doesn't complement the event center. You don't have anything to attract a big group into the downtown area that they would require the ballroom to host their general sessions, their breakouts, and their meal events. And then you're just left with an event center that will probably sit more vacant than it does currently, and then you're only going to be hurting yourself in a downtown area. It's important. It's going to spark more business opportunities, and it's just an unfortunate thing due to our economy that the convention groups haven't been coming back to Reno because your first-tier cities have been eroding our capability of holding that business. Basically, when Las Vegas is selling at $119, we're really stuck and can't attract that business that would have come to us in the years past.
I appreciate that.
I have a question. It said in here that there's a brochure, multi-page brochure. Is that something that you have with you? Thank you.
Yes, it looks like this. It's relatively new. It folds out. And over here, it talks about the event exhibit space and the Reno Ballroom expansion. So this is something that the RSCVA is put together, and we're using. Pardon me?
You can put it on this.
Oh, sorry. Didn't see that. That's the front page. And it really folds out. And right here, you'll see the Reno Ballroom is mentioned. So this is a new tool that all of the salespeople of Reno can actually use when they go out on sales calls, trade adventures, and I just came back with a media program with the RSCVA in Washington, D.C., and we hosted customers. And the Reno Ballroom was talked about quite a bit, if not by myself, but my associate Carol Creekman, and of course, John Linen and Chris Baum out at the center.
And we're not, there's no restriction on the type of demographic of a convention that you're attempting to attract?
No, everything's fair game right now.
Okay.
Yes.
It is subject to the approval of the city manager if there's something they don't think is appropriate or for whatever reason. But, so it is subject to approval. We send those bookings. And
yeah, I think what I was getting at was we're at a time in life where gaming is not the only demographic of which we're looking for conventions to fill. I just wanted to make sure we're...
No, and to that end, such as youth groups, wrestling activities, they don't have a gaming propensity, but there is food and beverage component, and of course, utilization of the space. Consideration of Soldier of Fortune convention might be an opportunity. The city manager has to approve it, but those are groups that I would probably never have booked in the past, but because of the times, you may want to venture out and take a chance with them.
Any other questions? Okay. Can we have a motion? Motion for approval?
Second.
And a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to J3. Mr. Manager? The parking program? Who's?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe Mr. Flansburgh is going to give this presentation, and I do not.
There he is. Just walked in. Trying to get some work done and still be involved in our meeting, huh, John?
There's a lot to do.
I know.
For the record, John Flansburgh, Director of Public Works. At the last meeting, we had a discussion about the Midtown parking pilot, and in that meeting, we were asked to get together and look at the overall parking program so that we could take a look at what our objectives would be for parking altogether. And so with that, we did meet last week. We have another meeting coming up, and we'll be presenting a full report on the status of where we are today at the March 13th meeting. I guess a couple clarifications I would like to make today, though, is that we do have separate parking systems in place. And when I talk about a system, it's how they actually work. We have, for instance, at UNR, we have permits that are purchased. The permits are purchased, they're placed in their dash. When the community service officers go through to enforce that, they're looking to see if the permits are visible or not. If they aren't, they write a citation. Those citations, I believe, are $50 each. On Midtown, we have time-limited parking. So again, it's not paid parking. And the only way to enforce that is to have some way of knowing when someone's exceeded the 2 hours. And so in the past, it was chalking tires, as we kind of went through discussion last time, which is the same thing we would do, say, in Wells Business District with what we have there for time-limited parking. And what we did is a pilot program for a sensor that gave us that information that we needed to know when someone exceeded the 2-hour time limit. And so that allowed for enforcement to go from there. And then finally, we have the third type of parking, which is our paid parking. And so we will bring back a more comprehensive discussion of those, but we're talking about how those integrate together and how they're separate and how that would work in an overall program for the city. Because I do think that what we've done in the past is bring together just a solution at a certain location and not overall. There was discussion about enforcement last time as well in regards to the time-limited parking. And in reality, I think the time-limited parking, without having a system in place, enforcement really is only done kind of by a spot check here and there or by a service request from a business. And so I think that having something in place where you do have that information is important to us so we can know when that's happening and be more efficient with our time.
But to that point, if you have in that system, you have one failure, it results in 100% inability on the collection side.
So if you have if you're looking at time limited only, and that's what I was kind of talking about was the time limited side, that is letting you know when a car entered the space and when it left the space. And so if you have a failure in that, that would just mean that the clock wasn't synced up right when the person actually arrived or left. But I think we'd be able to kind of take that out. I think what you might be referring to is actually our paid parking, because you've got integration of separate systems coming together where you've got a sensor that is sensing when a vehicle went into an area and stayed, but you're also tying that back to if they paid or not, and that being the determining factor on whether a citation would be issued. And
I guess what I was getting at is if you have a kiosk, one kiosk that is not working, your enforceability becomes system-wide, even if you have one kiosk, because then it's a question of whether it's working or not. So in other words, you may have an area where the system appears to be working, but 3 other areas where it appears to not be working. That makes the entire enforceability of the system unenforceable, correct?
so what it makes happen there is ensuring that the information's getting back to the central server to let us know when someone actually has paid or has not. The question being if the kiosk, again, the paid parking, not the time-limited parking, but the paid parking, which is the only place we have is in downtown for that, then what you're talking about, it is possible for someone to try to pay, perhaps at a kiosk, if it was not operating correctly, and therefore they would maybe not have paid, and the citation, it's that dilemma that we get in on whether.
Okay. So with that
how our
system, if
enforcement
you
goes.
have one failure, you have complete failure on an enforceability side. You get what you know where what I'm saying.
I understand where you're coming from with
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Mr. Dorch?
Yeah, where are we at on Midtown right now? I mean, I know that was one of the questions that came up last time was, could they extend the pilot program while we're trying to work through this? Did they come up with any solution for that?
They did come up with a solution. It's a bridge solution where there would be a cost for us to continue that service, a kind of a monthly rate, and that's a discussion that
For the 13th?
That's a discussion that I would need to have with our city manager and on how we want to handle, if we want to go forward with that cost or just discontinue for a period, how we want to handle that administratively.
And that'll all be part of the presentation on the 13th, though?
It will bring that piece in the 13th, yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we're on J4.
Item J4, Tri-Data Emergency Medical Report. Who's doing that?
Language from the joint meeting.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
I move to accept accept the emergency medical systems analysis final report and provide the following direction to staff regarding the recommendations contained within the final report. Oh, what is that recommend? That recommendation is to continue implementing it. Yes, thank you.
Have a motion, do I have a second? I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item J5. We have somebody, well, we'll go ahead and then somebody can speak.
Before you today is 16 special event sponsorship applications for in-kind sponsorship forwarded by the Special Events Sponsorship Committee, and we're looking for direction and possible approval from City Council. Alexis Hill from Special Events, for the record.
Okay, we have one public comment. Nicole Velez? Nicole Belz, B-E-L-E-Z? She's in favor. Are you here? Are you Nicole? Well, come on up, Nicole.
Excuse me, I was trying to get work done as well. I am here to speak on behalf of special events in the community. My name is Nikki Velez. First, I'd like to thank you all for giving special events this opportunity and supporting it throughout the community. I believe that events have a very important impact on our community and are a vital part of Reno's culture. I specifically am here to talk about David M. White's Making the Grade Skate Contest. This event focuses on youth education. I don't know if this will show, but this is a quote from one of our participants' parents. This is one of the only events in Reno that combines youth and education. We take into account the grades of K through 12 students in order to compete in a competition. In skateboarding, last year's event had over 50 participants, and this year we hope to expand. The man who made all this possible is David White. He's a local dentist, and one man saw a problem in the community and took it upon himself to create this event to help the youth and help raise grades and support our community. With that in mind, I just really believe in special events and their impact on the community. And I would like to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Chair will entertain a motion. Ms. Adria.
Mr. Mayor, this move for approval, and just want to give some big thank you and recognition to people who've been involved in this. As council knows, this has been a very long, evolving process trying to hone in on this. And this is kind of phase one of 2 recommendations that will be coming to the council. We actually sat down and revisited with the larger events that were securing larger funding, requesting larger money, and potentially receiving larger service accommodations from us. That'll be at another time, but we've had community-wide support on a working committee that then brought recommendations to our council committee, and it's a good work in progress, and we've had really good cooperation from the events, really good.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item J6. Yes. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimous. Item
Thank you.
J7.
Absolutely nothing. Thank you.
Item J7. Chair will entertain the motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item J8. She's not here so we'll get one at the next session.
May I make a comment on this item, Mr.
Sure.
Mayor? Mr. Manager, there's maybe a 10-page staff report that was given to us or some of us. You know, I don't think I got it till they brought it down, and maybe it was available. I think it came with the item we canceled on the Summit Sierra, and the cover sheet said, but, and maybe some of it's just recycled language that keeps going. But if we're gonna, and I know it's fast moving, but if we're gonna get it that late, yeah, maybe it's not worth staff having to go through the effort of writing it. You know what I'm saying? Because I still haven't seen it and read up on it, and if direction's not needed, then, and she's not here, you know, maybe, I don't know how to.
Mr. Mayor and council members, if I might address that. Cadence isn't here, she's scheduled to be here at 3 o'clock. So there's typically legislative hearings, legislative committee meetings in the morning, and so usually by the afternoon she's available. And I will say that, you know, things change down at the legislature every day, and so this is a standing item that we have through the entire legislative session, and we provide the information as quickly as we can. So whatever we're not able to cover at this meeting, we would simply just cover at the next meeting. So I understand the difficulty in council getting these staff reports sort of at the last minute, but really with the legislative session, we turn these out as fast as we can and want to get them to council as quickly as we can.
And Mr. Manager, I did receive mine before noon yesterday, so we had a little bit of time. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll go to item K, City Clerk, Boards and Commission appointments. Downtown Police District.
Yes.
Who's on that one?
I am.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
And I would like to nominate Jim, oh, wait, no, that isn't me. That's
me.
you. I'm sorry. He's on the other committee that I'm on, and he's been talking to me about wanting to be
Okay,
in
all
that.
right.
That's okay. We would like to appoint Jim Galloway.
Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Northeast Neighborhood Advisory Board, Ward 4.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to appoint Scott Catron.
Have a second. Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item K1C, Recreation and Parks.
I'd like to motion to reappoint Benjamin Cisneros. He was just appointed back in December, and I guess he was only filling out a month. If I had known, I would have, we could have waited a month, but.
Second. Second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Urban Forestry.
Mr. Mayor, that's me as well. I'd like to motion to appoint Rod Hollenbeek, and then we have 3 other vacancies, and we're searching for people who have an interest in urban forestry
Okay.
and for that.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Ward 1, Southwest Neighborhood Advisory Board.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion for Susan Burkhammer to join that board, and Matt Johnson.
Okay, do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries. Senior Citizen Advisory Board.
We have not interviewed any applicants at this time, so no
We'll
necessary.
continue to advertise, okay. Identification, mayor and council, items for future agendas. Any items for future agenda?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would like to request, looking at our SUP for small businesses that want to have extending hours, looking at some other, like Sparks and Washoe County per se. Ours is at $5,000 regardless of a small business or a big business. So I would like to see if we could direct staff to look at a smaller, like a mini SUP for small businesses so that they could have extended hours and we can continue to be business friendly. Interesting enough, San Francisco, their mini SUP is about $1,700 and ours is $5,000. So I think we need to get on the same playing field.
Okay. Any other items?
Do we need to, or do we want to give direction to staff with regards to Mr. Peak's presentation on the builder's suggestion about reviewing the impact fees? Do we need to do that?
I think we already are doing that.
Yeah.
I believe we are.
We're already doing
So
that.
maybe, Mr. Manager, maybe at our next meeting, we could just get an update on where we are in that process. And also the TOD, modifications to the TOD, because it's kind of parallel, just where we are in that process.
Well, I think even broader on where we are in processes, I'm starting to, it seems like we're clearing through a lot of stuff, and staff will come up and say, council directed us to do this, and I'm saying, I don't recall doing that. And, you know, I would like an update on what is in the pipeline, because those 3 ordinances today to the zoning code, you know, I don't know how long they've been working at them, but they weren't, they weren't really did a whole lot. I saw particularly a couple of them. And then this Summit Sierra thing, council directed that. Well, we weren't here. So how many things are in the pipeline that before they're here and staff's putting time on, we can maybe reconsider, because we've been on 3 months and things are still working through the pipeline. I'd like to know what the work plan is. I mean, in some ways it shows on the 3-month, but some ways it doesn't.
Okay. Any others? One thing that I want to bring back after participating in the caucuses every week, that I think the new people are getting used to settling in now, and I think that it's time for us to reconsider or consider whether we want to keep doing caucuses. Everybody knows they can go to Andrew and he can get staff and get questions answered, instead of us tying up 20 or 30 staff members every day or every other week. So I'd like to bring up discontinuing caucus meetings. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Are there any other items you want to put on?
One more, can we get a copy of the open meeting law manual?
Sure.
And maybe bring up a presentation on open meeting law?
Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. I can send you an open meeting law manual today electronically if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay. Liaison reports. Ms. Breckus.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, what item are we on here?
Liaison reports.
Liaison report.
L2.
Oh, I have no liaison reports to provide.
Ms. Jordan.
He's ahead of me.
I don't have anything other than I have a great liaison, and I appreciate her very much.
Mr. Dorch. Ms. Sheeby. Ms. Zedra. Mr. Delgado.
Nothing.
All right. Now we'll go down to discussion, item L4. Whoops. Any professional meeting reports? All right, now we'll go to item L4, discussion, possible direction staff regarding a positional statement by the city council to the public and future city councils related to the desired objectives and return on investments from the commitment of city funds to ACE's baseball team between 2013 and 43 pursuant to the settlement. Ms. Breckus?
Thank you, Mayor. I asked for this to come on as a result of the agreement that we restructured with baseball, which is unique in that each year, the council that's sitting during the budget cycle will be asked to appropriate funds from the general fund if, if the TIF doesn't come back. And it's a different amount. It escalates over the course. And knowing that it's not possible for any of us to be here through that whole term of that agreement. I mean, it's a long-term agreement. I was thinking that there would be some message that we could give, possibly through a resolution tool or a statement, to let the future councils know and the public why we did this and what we're hoping to expect. And the reason is a fundamental belief that I have, that when you participate, a government participates in economic development efforts, which this ostensibly is, it's redevelopment, economic development, there should be an expectation of a high return on investment. And And so I think there needs to be measurables, and I would look at it, if we went down this path, that this would be a template that we would customize for every economic development effort that we participate in, because I think that's where best practices are going right now, whether you're a city or a state. And with regards to this one, I went back, and they didn't come up during a lot of our baseball discussion, but I went back to some of the early analysis when the deal was put together, and I'm talking about the preponderance test for the TID and the Kaiser Marston for the TIF, okay? So there was some analysis, and there were measurements there that were by third parties saying this will happen if you make this investment and this stadium is built. And it was 850,000 square feet in retail, and that includes residential, retail, and a hotel. That's about another Meadowood Mall. That's what the thinking was back then, which was, right on the cusp of the bust. There was an estimate down to the city's coffers in tax revenue, about $9.2 million over the course of the agreement. Then there was also even prorated out to what the school district would get. It was a full picture of what the impacts would be. There was also an attendance numbers provided of about 5,000 in our 7,500 square foot stadium. I'm not suggesting that we would make statements that specific and go that micro, but some broader statements that at this point in time in 2013, within what was called the baseball district, we have we characterize the area, vacancies, we have underutilized parcels, maybe even attach a map or APN numbers, and so that in the future, the council in 10, 15, 20, 25 years out can say, well, look, the area has revitalized. We see these parcels have been developed. At minimum, they could look and see if the hotel that was represented, that it would not be built if the baseball deal was not accomplished. They can look to see and say that was represented. The buildings that are part of the complex now, are those thriving? They could look and see at attendance numbers and see where we're at. We could anticipate a thought that we would continue our attendance at a sustainable rate. I read a short story in the last week that the end of the team that used to play at Moana dropped down to about 2,000, but the loyal people were still out there, and there was a following. So just in case attendance isn't there, we could say what it is today and capture it. And I think this would give the guidance to what we've put out there for this other council's obligation in this partnership that we forged with the baseball team. So,
But don't we already have all of that?
I don't see it, Mr. Mayor, but
I mean, you've read
yeah.
every study they did on baseball and what we did to do it, and if the economy hadn't have changed, you'd see more retail and everything over there.
But that's the point, is that things have changed. And so I think we need expectations for this real time. But maybe the thinking is, the deal gets us the baseball team in town, and that's enough. We just want them here for 30 years, and that's one way to look at it. But I heard so much during the decision to commit these funds to this team that it was going to bring in all these other things. Well, how does the councils know in the future if these intangible and spin-offs will occur if we don't give them some guidance of what we think or hope will happen?
Well, I would think that they already have that with the discussions we did before. They can go back and check those at any time. I mean, it seems like it's going to take more than a couple of hours for staff to put something together like this. So it's up to this council how you want to look at it. Anyway, before we go any further, no, I'll call you in a minute.
I guess my question was, what are you trying to do? What is your intended result of doing that? And I understand maybe projecting, we could all, project what may or may not happen in the future, but let's say that something doesn't happen that we thought would. What are you trying to accomplish by doing this?
Well, here's the deal. Okay, 15 years out, it's May, budget workshop, right? Okay, we got $1 million, 900,000, I can't remember, May 2025. We owe 850,000. I'm pulling these off my head. Council, sitting there. Well, what is this? Okay, it's general funds, it's going to the baseball team. Okay, well, what do we hope? Well, the baseball team, the council back then anticipated that we'd have this, broadly, and this could be a 3-page resolution, sustained attendance levels. Well, let's go look and see if we've had sustained attendance levels. A payroll or a stature on the league, a par with across the league representations. There's a big issue right now in Indianapolis about why that team that this owner owns is not being supported by the local town. So, let's say we've got a team owner who is supporting and continuing to invest in the team, and just broad policy guidance to the council that allow them to go say, oh, this could be a thread we could research and understand if we're getting our bang for the buck.
What if it's determined that the attendance was projected to hopefully be at a certain level and it's not there? I guess what I'm saying is, what would the new council do with that information? I mean, I'm trying to get at what you're trying to
But
get
isn't
at.
that an economic indicator too? That's what you're trying to get at.
Exactly. I'm trying to, to suggest to the council.
Which I think is a good
what-
idea.
Okay.
In theory, I think it's a very good idea to see where we're going and to have the checks and balances in place, especially with something like this that comes out of the general fund. That's what you're saying, correct?
Yeah.
I thought, and don't misunderstand me, I thought we already had that because we had what we did to project by when we started all this show. And then all you have to do is go back and pull the stuff and look at it and see if anything's happening.
We've actually pulled everything out. All the requirements and obligations for the developer to do the, and I don't want to rehash the item, but to do the ancillary development that was occur, that's been stripped out. And when you read these schedules of 800,000 square feet of retail, that is not the expectation. And we could say, maybe it's at least, at minimum, we want to see healthy tax-producing returns from the other part of this baseball, the structures he's built already. He still owns some properties. He said he would revitalize those.
He does not own all those properties. He had some of them under option, and he owns some of them.
Well, that's
He never said he
right.
owned all of them.
But that could be, whereas we're looking for these implementations.
I just don't know where you're coming from, so that's my problem.
Yeah.
I guess my point is, I'm having a hard time understanding if your point is to penalize somebody for economic conditions of which may be out of their control. I'm trying to get at what would you do with that information? What would you do with that information that said they projected there would be all these square footage of this and it didn't meet what you believed or the council believed would happen? What would you do with that information?
Well, each
your
individual
mic on?
council member could decide whether or not to vote to allocate that year, and as a body, they could decide to not allocate the money to the team in year 15, 20, or 25. And we're not getting the returns we had hoped for from baseball. I'll make a motion that we direct staff to spend more than 2 hours preparing a positional statement by the City Council to the public and future City Councils related to the desired objectives and return on investment from the commitment of city funds to the Aces baseball team between the years 2013 and 2043 pursuant to the settlement and restructuring agreement as along the lines of what's been discussed here.
Okay, before I get a second on that, I do have a public comment, and I want to take the public comment. Ted?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor. I got to say, it was really informative to hear your deliberation on this item, and it will help to inform my public comment here today. I really think it's important to memorialize what the performance expectations for this project were in 2013. And we had an idea of what the economy was going to be like in 2007, and now we've sort of reset in 2013. And now what are those new performance expectations? And, as you know, I was very committed to this issue when it was moved from October all the way through December. And just recently, I received 2 studies that were done, one in 2007, one in 2009, in reference to what were the performance expectations. And I find it really interesting that neither one of those studies was brought up. 5 meetings here at the City Council, and as a member of the public, I had no idea those studies existed. And I think in light of Councilwoman Zadra's comments when you approved it, that she was approving the first 5 years of this deal, what are we going to do to inform future councils about what our expectations were? And I read the book by Dr. Judith Grant Long out of Harvard, Private Public Partnerships in Major League Sports Facilities, and she suggests three reasons for a public partner to get involved in these things. That's one is economic development, two is urban development, and the third is community pride. And I really feel like we could establish some goals in those three areas that would help us understand, are we getting a return on that investment? When it comes to economic development, we could potentially measure sales tax. When it comes to urban development, we could measure, as Councilwoman Breckus suggested, square footage of retail space or underutilized lots. And when it comes to that community pride, I think real easy, let's just measure attendance. If we see a decline in attendance over the next 5, 10, or 15 years, what does that tell us about the success of this project and our public investment in dollars? Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll close the public section and bring it back to the table. I have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
I have a second discussion on that motion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't really see the point in it, so I'm not going to support the motion.
And
I just think, whether you're doing a shopping mall or a baseball stadium, I just feel like those are the things that you do. I do them in my business just to see where we're going. I think they're a good checks and balances. This might, the baseball issue might not be the right issue to bring this up on. I don't know, but that's where I'm.
Are you talking about doing this annually?
Any council sitting here, when they go to allocate that money, is going to have to base the decision on what their expectations are, not what our expectations are.
And what the economy is.
And from that standpoint, I don't see the point in putting staff through this process.
Yeah, and I'm not supportive of it because I think there's a large component of baseball which has family and civic value, which you can't put a dollar figure on. And therefore, how do you evaluate that portion of it moving forward and whether or not you've met some criteria with a future city council? It's almost saying, let's say we have a park that the city
That's what I'm saying, take baseball out of it.
Okay, but if you have a park that the city has put in place and you, I don't know, let's pick one of the big parks in town and not enough people went and walked their dogs there, or do we close up the park? I'm having a hard time. I understand that there's a component of it which is economic, but there's a component of it that's not, that's more civic and family valued. And so for that reason, I'm not supportive of this.
Any other comments? Ms. Zadra?
Mr. Mayor, if I understood the description correctly, Ms. Breckus, you're looking for like a 3-page, what I would call a summary that addresses the point that you countered with, Mr. Mayor. All of that information exists somewhere anyway. Why would we do it again? I would be okay with summarizing all of that into one location. If that's what you're talking about. I think that makes perfect sense, so that future council 15 years from now, 20 years from now, doesn't have to go find 7 or 8 different documents. They can get it in one summary. I think that would be reasonable. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. I happen to like the whereases of a resolution format because resolutions are a great tool. They're just a statement of intent or purpose. It's not like a contract. It's not like an ordinance. It would be a summary with some large, broad statements. And a resolution on file, the clerk will always have it.
Any other discussion? Call for a motion. I got a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those say no? No. So show it 4-3. Okay. We have no public hearing at 6. Why would I want to do that? But we will. Okay. Soon as you're ready, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Oh, we'll take it at the end of the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, it appears I don't have a copy of my staff report. Can you give me just a second? You all must have been very efficient today. Everyday councilwoman. Mr. Mayor, thank you. For the record, Cadence Matievich, Assistant City Manager. My apologies. I got here as quickly as I could within the limits of the speed limit.
No apology necessary.
I have a number of bills for your consideration today. And in the staff recommendation, you will see that we have several bills that we're recommending that the council take a position of support on. The first one would be AB 38, the second AB 61, third AB 89, AB 112, SB 171, SJR 5, and also a bill draft request that we are seeking direction from the council with a recommendation of support. Would be pleased to go through any of those individually if you wish. We have several bills that we are supportive of the concept, the initiative behind the bill, but just have some technical amendments that the city would seek before we would put our full support behind those bills. Those are AB 32, AB 87, SB 55, and SB 165. And then we have two bills in particular where we are looking for the council to weigh in, largely because the bills are really policy in nature and would be seeking direction from the council as to your policy decision on those. And so with that, I'd be pleased to provide any additional detail on those where we have a recommendation, and on those that we don't, I can go into some of the specifics on the bill if you'd like.
I don't have a copy of what you're discussing, so.
I didn't get it till I sat down here today, and it's probably up on my desk. Could you, maybe just, the numbers aren't resonating, could you maybe just go?
What each number is, so that, yeah.
I haven't had a chance.
We certainly can, absolutely.
On the ones you need direction on.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to belabor it. If you'd had a chance to see it, I apologize
No.
if you did not get these
No, we
inadequate time to review all of them.
Well, you brought one to me, yeah.
I stole Naomi's.
So AB 30, AB 32? Does everybody have one now? All right, everybody's got one. AB 32?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on that bill, we're recommending a position of support if amended. This is a bill that was brought forth by the Nevada Association of Counties and has to do with some of the tax abatements for new or expanded businesses for renewable energy facilities. The Association of Counties is seeking to add to the current provisions that have to do with these abatements an opportunity for the county commission in the county where the project is going to take place to have an opportunity to weigh in on the abatements. And while certainly, this council has discussed local authority, local autonomy, the ability to participate in the process when abatements are coming forward that may impact a local government. This particular bill only grants that authority for review to county commissions. It did not provide for review by city councils, which may be affected as well. I would note that some of these abatements are a result of AB 449 from the last session. Many of you may remember that was the omnibus economic development bill that came through. There have been some concerns voiced that adding these additional reviews by local governments may add time to the process for the Governor's Office of Economic Development when they are looking to bring new businesses in the state, so there have been some concerns expressed on that. And so it is our recommendation that perhaps a position of supporting the bill if it's amended to allow, if the bill's intent is to allow review by the local governments that would be affected, to include all impacted local governments, but to also provide for a process whereby that review takes place in a very short period of time so that it would not potentially delay any economic development, any business that's looking to move to the area or a project.
Okay. Any questions about it? Give me a motion of support.
Well, you know what? I have a comment. I wasn't crazy about this for the city. I think, let the counties make the foothold on this if needed, because we use redevelopment. And when we use redevelopment, the law currently says we don't have to go to the county, we don't have to go to the school district, but we can take their TIF. And I'm afraid if we come in as a heavy on this, people are going to start saying, hey, cities, you're going to have to go walk and show your economic development incentives to the school districts and the county commissions, which is not a bad idea. So not really crazy for the cities to weigh in, let the counties do it, and in 2 years, maybe see how the county process works, then it's time for the cities to step in. That's my thoughts.
Any other comment? Have a motion, do I have a second? Second. Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. AB 33.
I voted against it, Mayor.
Show it down 6-1, I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, I was late. I'm sorry.
AB 33.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Got a quick synopsis of it?
Yeah, I think I can. This is a bill that's being brought forward by the Governor's Office of Energy, seeking to expand some of the existing partial abatements that exist for companies that are building what are known as green facilities, and those that might have LEED certification or those types of things, looking to expand that to persons who would be renovating existing current structures. Of course, as with any abatement, this does have the potential to impact revenues to the city. As we've gone through and reviewed the businesses or the projects that have been constructed using these abatements since it was put into place. There have been, unfortunately, not a lot of facilities constructed in Reno, but certainly expanding this to the rehab of existing structures would expand the number of businesses, projects in our community that perhaps would be eligible.
So you're not requesting anything on this one at this time?
Well, Mr. Mayor, again, this is one that I think, because it goes to the policy of what this body's position is on abatements for green projects. For many years, this council had as one of their priorities green initiatives, and so I felt that it was most appropriate for you to discuss amongst yourselves, weighing the benefits versus the costs for supporting development of this nature, rehabilitation of this nature, and that the benefit, does that offset the potential impact that could result from the tax abatements?
Okay. Discussion, any questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
So right at this time, we don't know what the financial implications could be.
No.
We have no clue.
We don't, Councilman. It's difficult to estimate on these, what projects would come forward. As I think the most of the members of this body know, those conditions whereby you become LEED certified, or if the Governor's Office of Energy were to develop similar standards, are not easily achieved. And so, I don't think that we're going to see a rash of these and lots of abatements. In our analysis, we don't feel like there's significant risk, if you will, of lots of high dollar abatements coming forward. But again, because there is that risk, we wanted to bring it to your attention and seek your direction.
Well, if it was in taxation, no action taken, it's just hanging out there. It wasn't referred to a committee or anything, right? I mean, it is the governor's bill, but...
No, Councilwoman, when it's referred to committee, that means that the committee that it gets referred to. So this bill has had a hearing in the Taxation Committee. They didn't take any action on it. Generally speaking, policy committees will hear a bill allow time if there are concerned people to meet with the bill sponsor, and then they'll generally bring it back a week or so later in what's called a work session. And that would be the time when any amendments would be presented, potentially approved, and a vote would be taken on this. So certainly there's still opportunity for the city to go on record with our position on this bill. And that would be in the Assembly, and then it would need to move to the Senate side. So if this bill continues through the process, it would be appropriate for us to take a position if the council, in fact, feels strongly one way or the other.
Can we just watch it and just wait and see what happens?
Absolutely, Councilwoman. You may give us direction to monitor the bill.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Aye.
No, motion carries unanimously. Office of Economic Development.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, another abatement bill, tax abatement bill. This is AB 38. Again, some of the byproduct of AB 449 from last session regarding partial abatements of property taxes, business taxes, other taxes. This bill, staff is recommending support. It's really some cleanup that GoEd is doing based on what they've learned over the last couple of years with these abatements, is making a changes in the number of employees that have to be required, the dollar thresholds that have to be met, actually increasing those dollar thresholds. So we feel like the potential impact or risk to us from the abatements is actually lessened by this action. And so with that, we would recommend a position of support.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. AB 61.
Continuing the Office of Economic Development theme and abatements, yet another bill. This one makes some additional refinements and then also speaks to government entities, nonprofits that are designated as regional development authorities, broadens that, indicates that a local government that is not designated as a regional development authority would still be able to apply for grant or a loan from the funds that are available through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So not just one agency in an area. So under this, the city would be entitled to apply for those grants or loans if we wish to. And so with that, staff is recommending a position of support.
Have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. SB 165.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. SB 165 is a bill that has to do with incentives to attract the film and motion picture industry to produce films and other entertainment projects in our state. And while I certainly know that this council is supportive of efforts to bring jobs to our state and to our city, to diversify our economy, and I know that you would be supportive of efforts that work towards that end, we do again have some concerns with how these incentives are implemented, what the potential risk would be to local government. This is a new concept for Nevada. It's been tried in other states with some success and some challenges. We think right now that the bill does not have the refinements that it needs that would protect us from potentially significant fiscal impact that would result from the mechanisms for these incentives. And so, again, knowing that you're supportive of efforts to create jobs and expand business, we're recommending a position of support if amended to address those potential risks.
And I did write a letter to the Senate expressing support, but also sent a correcting letter that there were some issues that we had to discuss, but we wanted to be part of that discussion. I have two council members that sit on the RCVA. I did get a request from the RCVA, and I did get a request from the mayor of Las Vegas and a couple other mayors to send a letter of support. So I did. I happened to be on the road at the time, or I would have sent the second letter first, but I did follow it up with a letter.
Let me ask you something about this. The language in here says a tax credit, whereas other economic development instruments call it abatements. Is this tax credit something I'm familiar with, and maybe some of us are in terms of the federal tax code, tax credits. Is this a new instrument into the state toolbox for economic development?
It is, Councilwoman. It is something that's different from any other. You're correct. It is not an abatement. It is a credit. And again, that's some of the concerns about the bill is that it doesn't really define how that credit is going to be processed, if you will. If I could just kind of quickly try and distill this down as best that I can. Essentially what it does is it takes film projects that come to our state. They can apply to the Governor's Office of Economic Development to potentially receive an incentive that results from the spending that they do while they are here in the state doing their productions. And there are certain types of expenses, depending upon what they are, be they payroll, be they actual purchase of goods, any variety of expenses that they incur. Depending upon the nature of the expenses, they're eligible for a credit for a percentage of those expenses. And the percentage varies depending upon what type of expense it is. So to simplify it, say you had $1 million, the production company had $1 million in expenses, and I'm sort of rounding here for ease of explanation. Roughly 20% of those expenses they could earn as a credit. So on $1 million worth of expenses, it could be a $200,000 tax credit. What's interesting about this and what we haven't seen in the state before is that they can take that credit, and that credit is transferable. And it isn't clear in the bill what that credit can be redeemed for, if you will, if it's only property taxes, if it could be sales taxes, if it could be general services taxes, if it's modified business taxes. It could be, as the bill is drafted now, a very broad group of taxes. And it doesn't specify that it must be redeemed in the county where the expenses were made. So a production could take place in Las Vegas. They could get that $200,000 tax credit and then potentially, with the bill as it's drafted now, bring it and redeem it in Washoe County. Another interesting part about this that I don't believe we have any mechanisms for currently in this state is that it is a transferable tax credit. And so they can take this tax credit and they can sell it to another entity. So this film production company could take that and sell it to a business in Reno who could submit it as a payment for their property taxes to the city of Reno. So some interesting concepts. Again, they've been implemented in other states, and in many of those states to great success. They've seen, triple-digit increases in the number of productions taking place in their communities. They've seen many unemployed workers go back to work. So really, I think the intent behind the bill is good. It's just getting the mechanics right, if you will.
I think it's very scary. I mean, this tax credit, the feds have tax credit programs, but they have, IRS regulations this thick and monitor it, whereas, this crosses jurisdictions. And does the credit sold to, do you remember, how that's working with RTC? Credit sold, it's like the secondary market could be kind of a scary thing that could be a big liability for the jurisdictions. So I don't know, what do y'all think?
Well, personally, I think we ought to go ahead and follow it through and see whatever details we can find at this point and go from there.
Yeah, I think the concept definitely has merit. I mean, I think the goal of trying to get these film productions happening here is a good goal, and it comes back to we've got to be doing more and more things differently than we've done in the past to get more people to come here. But I think the concerns that you brought up are valid, and I think we've got to work those out. So I guess I'm okay with the position to support if amended. I mean, is that what you're looking for?
That's the recommendation we're making, Councilman.
Okay, that would be my motion.
Okay, got a second?
And I would second that, clearly with the understanding that we do need to be more competitive in all of our economic development activities. And this is one opportunity that could get us there, because we have seen that dramatic increase in locations where they are offering
Right.
incentives. And we need to be able to be a player in that field, but protect our interests as well. And that's exactly what you are attempting to do with modifications, correct? And we will see those, what you ultimately are going to be trying to secure. We will see those.
Absolutely, Councilwoman.
Great. So, second indeed.
I have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously.
Next bill is Assembly Bill 87, another bill that staff is recommending that we support if amended. I believe a number of the members of the council may have already received some input on this bill through your work on the Regional Planning Governing Board. This bill revises provisions governing local regulation of the zoning and construction of public schools in certain counties. I think this bill is probably a really good example of a bill that gets drafted, and when the bill sponsor sees it, says, wait a minute, that's not what I meant to do. That wasn't my original idea. The sausage-making process, we call that. And so we've spoken with the bill sponsor about our concerns that as drafted, this bill takes away local authority, would put requirements on us that may result in significant expenses by local governments in Washoe County. And so we have expressed those to him. It's Assemblyman Daley's bill. He has a working group. In fact, Assistant City Manager Bill Thomas, I think, is on his way to Carson City right now to participate in a meeting about this bill and some potential language that could resolve the concerns but still meet the goal of the bill, which is to expedite to the extent practical the process that schools, public schools undergo when they are planning to construct new facilities.
And Mr. Mayor, Cadence, could you speak to I'm trying to find the right word, different interpretation that was expressed at Regional Planning Governing Board so that there's clarity for the record?
Yes, Councilwoman, I think what you're referring to was their staff's interpretation of some new rules that have been put into place in the Assembly this session, whereby when you are testifying on a bill, they have put some parameters around the categories that you may testify in, and they're locked down sort of tightly, and it's really, what they're trying to do is be sure that the legislative record is very clear, and so that it doesn't go back, and you don't go back 5 years and go, well, they testified in support, but they said they only supported it if you completely gutted the bill and did this instead. Well, that's not really support. And so I think the direction, the information that you got from staff at Regional Planning was that your only options when adopting a position on these bills was to support it, to be neutral, or to oppose it. And while those regulations apply to the testimony, to the category that you testify under in a hearing, they're not trying to place those tight restrictions on the positions that this body can adopt. And my concern with taking that hardline approach is that if today, based on concerns about, with any of these bills that we've discussed today, that we have concerns about them, if I have an official position from this body of opposition to a bill, and particularly as we get to the later part of the session, we're working on compromise and we get to a place where, in fact, our concerns have been addressed and then we can go forward and support the bill, that the direction I have from you, that I don't have the latitude to change, is to oppose the bill. And so we've taken a little different approach than the staff at Regional Planning, and that's why you see me making some different policy recommendations, position recommendations to you than what you heard that day.
Any other questions? So you need from us.
Recommendation on this one would be to support it if it's amended.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 89.
AB 89 is a bill that did receive a hearing earlier this week. I did testify in support of the concept of the bill, indicated that this body had not yet taken a position on it. This authorizes the formation of benefit corporations in the state of Nevada. And benefit corporations are a relatively new structure for corporations that allows corporations in addition to, and so these are for-profit entities, these are not nonprofit entities, but for-profit entities to incorporate, and the short for it is a B Corp, under a B Corp, which allows them to, in addition to having their ultimate goal be profit, they may consider impact to the community and the environment as well when making a choice about the services that they deliver or the products that they manufacture. And we have a great example of a B Corp that already it's not a Nevada corporation, but Patagonia. And as we know, the jobs that are here at Patagonia are very coveted ones, and attract young, the millennials that want to work for corporations that have not just profit as their main goal. And so this is a great piece of legislation, in staff's opinion, that we would seek council support for.
Questions? Motion?
Move to support.
Me too.
We have a motion and lots of seconds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. AB 112?
AB 112 is another bill that we are recommending the council take a position of support on. Makes various changes relating to collective bargaining agreements, primarily providing that upon the end of the term stated in a collective bargaining agreement, that until a successor agreement becomes effective, the local government employer shall not increase any salary, wages, contributions, or other monetary compensation or benefits paid to or on behalf of employees in the affected bargaining unit. This is sort of what's known as the evergreen.
I don't, because, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. I think we have our own collective bargaining issues here under the existing laws that we should focus on. I don't think we need to be down there waving, a flag of changing the collective bargaining bills. So maybe we could just take a look and see if this thing gets scheduled for hearing.
I disagree. I think when we've got the opportunity to go in there and present the issues we have with our collective bargaining agreements, that we need to take advantage of that.
And we have a motion for support. May I have a second, and we'll continue discussion? We have a second. Okay. Continue, please.
Yeah, I just think we've got to take advantage of the opportunities. Even if it's not going anywhere, I think we need to get our position out there. And I've got that issue on another one of Kerner's bills also, and I didn't see it in your list.
Is it a bill or is it still a BDR, Councilman?
I don't know. The PERS?
I think that is still a BDR. I don't believe that we've seen the actual bill language on that yet.
Okay.
They're coming fast and furious.
Okay.
But you could bring it up, discuss the concept, so we're not cut short, next time. So, okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on 112? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-1. Senate Bill 55, please.
Senate Bill 55 revises provisions governing master plans. This is a bill that's brought forth by the City of Las Vegas. Again, a bill that as we review it, we're not, don't have strong opposition, do have some areas that we think need to be clarified. Our staff has been working with community development staff from Las Vegas to address those issues, and so would request a position of support if amended.
Have a motion for support?
Second.
And a second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. SB 171.
SB 171, we are recommending a position of support, provides for a program of matching grants to local governments for the maintenance and repair of public works. And what this does is it takes the portion of the government services tax that was increased several sessions ago and was originally conceived to be a funding source for the state highway fund, but has over the past couple years been diverted to the state general fund. and it's recommending that that fund, in fact, be transferred to the treasurer, be bonded against, and that the resulting funds be made available to local governments for grants, for matching monies for programs. Certainly, as this council is well aware, we have a long list of capital projects and a very short stack of money for that long list, and so we recommend that the council adopt a position of support for this bill.
Motion and
Second.
a second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. SJR 5.
SJR 5 urges. You
We
covered
have a
this earlier
motion.
today.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, BDR 19905.
Thank you, Councilwoman. This is one of those unique times when actually we have had the opportunity to see the full language that was submitted to the Legislative Council Bureau on this BDR. We don't often get that opportunity, which is why we typically don't bring you BDRs. But this one is a repeat of a bill that came forward last session, creating the Nevada Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations as a statutory permanent committee, with the goal of the committee being to foster effective communication, cooperations, and partnerships among the state government and local governments. This is what's referred to as the ACER. It came out of an interim study that took place after the 2009 session, and we are recommending that the council adopt a position of support.
Sounds like much of our planning a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Motion? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Wait, do we know where the governor's at on this? Because I know he had some issues with the broad number of standing committees and boards, and, well, I guess this is a legislative one, right?
It is.
Okay, okay. Never mind, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The status of our bills.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman. I hope that you all received a
Well,
memo.
can we, before we get into that, can I just I do want to address that Kerner bill. And it's my understanding it's a bill that would change PERS, make a major change to PERS from a defined benefit to a defined contribution plan. And you haven't heard anything about that yet?
Councilman, I haven't. I mean, we just see the simple bill title, but I haven't seen any language. I can certainly reach out to him and see if that's something that's in a condition that he's ready to release. Oftentimes legislators want to keep these
Okay.
close to their vest while they're still in development.
I don't think
but
it's a secret anymore.
yeah, I will certainly reach
Okay.
out to him, and if we can bring it back as a BDR, we will do so. But if it's released as a bill before that, then at your next meeting, we will certainly bring that for your
Okay.
input.
Great, thank you.
And to continue on, I hope that you all received the
scheduled.
memo that we distributed day before yesterday, perhaps it was, that both of our bills are going to be heard tomorrow. Just going to rip the Band-Aid right off, do them all in one day. So our charter bill is being heard in Assembly Government Affairs at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then Senate Bill 4, our bill having to do with protection for public employees when they come into contact with contagious diseases, will be heard in Senate Health and Human Services at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon.
Great, thank you. Have you heard any kind of conversation how we're going to fare?
I have. I've been having lots of conversation in the building with both legislators and interested parties. I do anticipate that we will have some opposition to our charter bill tomorrow morning, that there may be representatives of some of our employee organizations that are there in opposition to the bill. And that there may be representatives of the larger labor organizations that are also in opposition to the bill. As you will recall, we brought back a request to this body for an amendment to the bill to try and address some of those. I think that we've come a long way in the 4 weeks that we've been in session in making progress on that. On the other bill, we really haven't received a lot of opposition, if you will, but just like we have concerns about technical aspects of the bill, we've been contacted by the Administrative Office of the Courts on our bill having to do with the bloodborne pathogens, and had a long conversation with them today, and they have indicated that they are not going to oppose the bill, will simply go on record as saying they have some concerns, and we've been working with the City Attorney's Office, and they seem very amenable to supporting the bill if it's amended to address their concerns.
Great. Thanks, Cadence. How about the League of Cities bills?
The League of Cities bills similarly are moving through the process. A number of them have received hearings. To date, none of them have been called up for a work session to get votes on them, but they are also moving through the process. And the other item that I would note is tomorrow afternoon, the C-Tax bill will be up for a work session in Senate Revenue. That bill has already passed out of the Assembly unanimously. There were 3 members absent when the vote was taken, but all members that were present voted in support of that bill. So expecting it to move out of the Senate Revenue Committee tomorrow, likely be read again in the Senate early next week, and be on the governor's desk by the end of next week.
After months of work on yours and staff's part, good work.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That is it for me. Thank you for giving me a moment to get together. When I first arrived, I apologize if I delayed your meeting at all.
Not at all. Thank you. Okay. Yes, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Matievich and Mrs. Sausalito. They've been putting in a tremendous amount of time, nights and weekends, on this legislature. I left late last night, and they were still here working and were gathering up food to sustain them while they stayed. I don't know how long they stayed, but I just want this committee to know, and I want Mrs. Matievich and Mrs. Sausalito to know that I do appreciate their efforts.
Thank you.
And we hear it all the time from the electeds and even other representatives from some of our counterparts, and other other lobbyists are always giving us their insights to the wonderful job that you're doing for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we do not have any public hearings this evening, so we'll go to public comment. We do have one from Christopher Corbett, please.
Honorable Reno City Council, my name is Christopher Corbett. I am the Nevada State Coordinator for an organization called PANDA, which is People Against the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. And you may recall I've been here previously to raise awareness of the authorizations of indefinite detention and assassination without due process or trial as authorized under the NDAA 2012. I just wanted to update the board that yesterday, on February 26th, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors voted to pass a resolution of non-compliance. The resolution is titled Resolution Expressing Opposition to the Indefinite Detention Provisions of the National Defense Authorization Act. The resolution says, in part, San Francisco public agencies are instructed to decline requests by federal agencies acting under the detention powers granted by the NDAA or any authorization of force that could infringe upon the constitutional freedom of speech, religion, assembly, privacy, or rights to counsel, and further asked U.S. senators and members of Congress to actively work for the repeal of the NDAA's detention provisions. The other thing I wanted to just update you on is we do have a bill draft request, BDR 728. It is the Nevada Liberty Preservation Act, and we are working very hard to lobby in support of that. We have not yet seen the language of it, but once that bill drops, we would more than likely probably return here and ask for this board's support of the bill once we are able to see the language. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have no other requests to speak, is that so? We have no others, so motion, thank you. Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you.